4 hours. That's how long Elena Varelli's marriage lasted before her husband handed her divorce papers still warm from the printer. Adrian Cade, the man who owned half the city's dark corners, married her at midnight in a penthouse that cost more than most people's lives. By dawn, she was nothing, discarded like a contract gone bad. But here's the thing about being thrown away by a monster. You learn how monsters think. You learn their patterns, their weaknesses. And when you're invisible enough, you can burn their entire world down before they even smell the smoke. Stay with me until the end. Drop a like and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The champagne was still cold when Elena realized she'd made a catastrophic mistake. She stood in the center of Adrian Cade's penthouse, 43 floors above a city that glittered like broken glass, and watched her new husband stare at his phone with the kind of focus he hadn't given her all night. The wedding had been small, efficient. His mother hadn't attended. His business partners had sent gifts wrapped in silence and sealed with wariness. The officiant had stammered through the vows like a man reading his own death warrant. Elena had told herself it didn't matter. That marriage to Adrian Cade, feared, untouchable, the man who turned territory disputes into obituaries, was a door opening. An escape from the suffocating mundanity of her previous life working doubles at a hotel bar, fielding grabby hands and hollow promises from men who thought tips bought them ownership. Adrian had walked in 3 months ago. Ordered vodka, neat, didn't touch it, just watched her move through the crowd with eyes so dark they looked like they'd swallowed all the light in the room. He came back the next night, and the next. Never said much. Never had to. Men like Adrian didn't ask. They decided. When he finally spoke to her, it was simple. You're wasting yourself here. She'd laughed, bitter. And where should I be wasting myself? Somewhere that matters. 2 weeks later, he proposed. No romance, no grand gesture. Just a ring that cost more than her annual salary, and a question delivered like a business transaction. Marry me. You'll never work another shift in that hellhole. She'd said yes because what else was there? Another decade pouring drinks for men who'd forget her name by morning? Another string of roommates and ramen dinkets and wondering if 30 would arrive before anything real did. So she'd signed the papers. Worn the dress, white silk that clung like water, chosen by someone on Adrian's staff who knew her measurements better than she did. Stood in front of a man with kind eyes and shaking hands who pronounced them married under the eyes of the law and a God neither of them believed in. Adrian had kissed her. Once. Briefly. Like sealing an envelope. The reception was them. Just them. A table set for 2 with food she couldn't taste and wine that turned sour on her tongue. Adrian fielded 3 phone calls during the meal. His voice never changed. Flat, efficient, final. She caught fragments. Handle it. I don't care about his family. Make it clean. When the 3rd call ended, she set down her fork. Do you ever stop working? He looked at her like she'd asked something profound and stupid simultaneously. No? Then why get married? His jaw tightened. For a moment, just a flash, something moved behind his eyes. Something that might have been human once before whatever he'd become had calcified over it. Because it was time. That was the longest conversation they'd had all night. Now, at 3:47 a.m., Elena stood in a nightgown she hadn't chosen, in a home she didn't recognize, watching the man she'd married treat her like furniture. He was still in his suit, hadn't loosened his tie, hadn't touched her beyond that single contractual kiss. Her phone buzzed. A message from Kara, her former roommate. Girl, you okay? This is insane. Call me. Elena typed back, I'm fine, talk soon. She wasn't fine. Fine people didn't feel like they were standing on the edge of a roof waiting for someone to decide whether to pull them back or push. Adrian ended his call, pocketed his phone, finally looked at her, really looked, like he'd just remembered she existed. We need to talk, he said. Those 4 words landed in her chest like stones. He crossed to the bar, poured himself that vodka he never drank at her workplace, drained it in one swallow. His back was to her. Broad shoulders that carried weight she couldn't see, hands that had probably signed death sentences with the same pen that had signed their marriage license. This was a mistake, he said. Elena's lungs forgot how to work. What? The marriage. It's a mistake. He turned, His face was carved from something harder than bone. I need you to leave. The words didn't make sense. They arrived in the wrong order, carrying impossible meaning. We're married. We just got married. I know. He pulled an envelope from inside his jacket. Cream-colored paper. Expensive. The kind of stationery that came from places that didn't list prices. He set it on the glass coffee table between them. Your lawyer can review these. It's straightforward. No fault dissolution. You'll be compensated. Elena stared at the envelope like it might catch fire. Compensated. Generously. His voice could have been discussing weather, stock prices, anything but the systematic destruction of a 4-hour-old marriage. The settlement includes a lump sum, the apartment on Westbrook, it's already in your name, and a monthly allowance for 2 years. After that, you're independent, free. Free. She repeated the word because her brain couldn't process it into anything meaningful. You're divorcing me 4 hours after marrying me, and you think money makes that okay? Something flickered in his expression. Annoyance, maybe. Or the kind of impatience powerful men felt when the world didn't move fast enough to match their decisions. It's not about okay. It's about necessary. Necessary. Her voice cracked. Not from sadness, from something sharper, hotter. You want to explain what the hell that means? No. Simple. Final. I don't. The room tilted. Elena gripped the back of the nearest chair, her knuckles white against the black leather. Did someone threaten you? Is this about your business? Because if there's a problem, there's no problem. He was already moving toward the bedroom, done with the conversation before it had really started. There's a car waiting downstairs. It'll take you wherever you want to go. The settlement paperwork will be finalized by the end of the week. Adrian. She said his name like it might anchor him, make him human. Look at me. He stopped. Didn't turn around. Please. For a long moment, nothing. Just the hum of the city 43 floors below and the hammer of her pulse in her ears. Then he looked back over his shoulder, and what she saw in his face wasn't cruelty. It was absence. Like he'd already erased her, filed her away in whatever mental compartment he reserved for things that no longer mattered. The car's waiting, he repeated. Then he walked into the bedroom and closed the door. Elena stood there shaking, not with tears, but with something that felt like her entire body was trying to tear itself apart from the inside. She looked at the envelope, at the penthouse around her, all glass and steel in cold perfection, at the window that showed her a city full of lights and life, and people who had no idea that something in her had just shattered and reformed into a shape she didn't recognize yet. She grabbed the envelope, her purse, walked to the elevator on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. The descent was 43 floors of silence and fluorescent light, and the gradual understanding that she'd been used, discarded, thrown away like she'd never mattered at all. The car was waiting, black, anonymous. The driver opened the door without meeting her eyes. Where to, ma'am? Ma'am. Not Mrs. Cade, he already knew. Elena gave him Kara's address because she didn't have anywhere else to go. The apartment on Westbrook was real. She checked the next morning, hollow-eyed and numb, standing in front of a building she'd never seen before while a property manager handed her keys and congratulated her on her new home like she hadn't just lived through the most humiliating night of her existence. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a view of the park, furnished with the kind of tasteful neutrality that came from people who were paid to erase personality. Kara had held her while she cried, not the kind of crying that brought relief, the kind that felt like choking, like her body was trying to expel something poisonous that had gotten lodged too deep to reach. He's a psychopath, Kara kept saying, fury vibrating through every word. You dodged a bullet, a .50 caliber bullet, but it didn't feel like dodging. It felt like being shot and left to bleed out slowly while everyone pretended the wound wasn't fatal. The settlement came through 6 days later. The money hit her account with enough zeros to make her dizzy. The divorce was filed under terms so favorable her lawyer, a tired woman named Sharon, who'd seen everything twice, actually seemed impressed. Whoever negotiated this wanted you quiet and gone, Sharon said, flipping through the paperwork. You're set, honestly. You could disappear and live comfortably for years. Disappear. Like that was the goal, like being erased was a gift. Elena signed everything, took the money, moved into the Westbrook apartment, and spent 2 weeks staring at walls and trying to figure out what the hell had just happened to her life. The media found out, of course. Someone always talked. By the end of the month, her name was attached to Adrian Cade's in every gossip column and underground forum where people traded rumors about the city's criminal elite. Mystery bride discarded after hours. Cade's shortest marriage on record. Who is Elena Varelli? That last one stung because she didn't know anymore. The woman who'd said yes to Adrian Cade felt like a stranger. Someone naive enough to believe that a man who built empires on fear might have something human left inside him. She stopped leaving the apartment, stopped answering calls, let Kara's worried texts pile up unanswered, spent her days watching the city through windows that felt like aquarium glass. Her on one side, real life on the other. Then 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, she saw him. Adrian, on the news, standing outside a courthouse, flanked by lawyers in suits that cost more than cars, making a statement about some territorial dispute that had turned bloody. His face was stone. His voice was controlled. He looked exactly like what he was, untouchable. Elena watched him lie, because she could see it now, the microscopic tells she'd missed before, and something inside her shifted. Not broke, not healed, changed. She thought about the phone calls during their wedding dinner, the cold efficiency, the way he'd discarded her without explanation or hesitation, the way powerful men moved through the world like consequences were for other people. And she thought, what if I stopped being invisible? The idea arrived fully formed, like it had been waiting for her to be ready. She didn't want revenge, not yet, not in any way she could articulate, but she wanted to understand, to see the machinery that had chewed her up and spit her out, to map the empire that had deemed her worthless. So she started watching. It began small, public records, business filings. She had time and money and a hole where her life used to be. The Cade Empire wasn't subtle. You couldn't be when you controlled that much territory. But it was layered. Shell companies, silent partners, transactions that looped through so many intermediaries they looked almost legitimate. Elena had never been particularly good with numbers, but she learned. Spent hours in libraries and coffee shops, teaching herself the language of money laundering and asset protection. She found patterns, discrepancies, places where the official story didn't match the money trail. She got better at being invisible, at listening. The city was full of people who worked adjacent to power, drivers, assistants, bartenders, the kind of people powerful men looked through without seeing. She started going to the places they went, not the elite clubs or penthouses, but the spots where the machinery showed its gears. Diners at 2 a.m. where security details grabbed coffee, parking garages where drivers waited for their bosses. People talked, especially when they thought no one important was listening. She heard about shipments that disappeared, payoffs that went sideways, lieutenants who'd gotten too ambitious and ended up as cautionary tales. The Cade organization wasn't a monolith. It was an ecosystem of fear and greed barely held together by Adrian's reputation for swift, brutal consequences. And the more Elena listened, the more she understood. Adrian Cade wasn't untouchable because he was strong. He was untouchable because everyone was too afraid to look closely. 4 months after the divorce, she was sitting in a 24-hour diner nursing bad coffee when she heard 2 men in the booth behind her discussing a problem. They kept their voices low, but she caught fragments. Can't keep bleeding money like this. Tell Cade, you want to tell him we lost another shipment? Someone's skimming. Has to be. Numbers don't lie. Elena's pulse jumped. She pulled out her phone, pretended to scroll while she recorded. Got 3 minutes of conversation before they left. At home, she played it back, made notes, cross-referenced names against the corporate structures she'd mapped. Found the discrepancy they were talking about. A logistics company that reported one set of numbers to the state and another set internally. Someone was stealing from Adrian Cade. She should have let it go. Should have deleted the recording and gone back to her safe, compensated existence. But the knowledge sat in her chest like a live wire. He threw you away. You owe him nothing. True. But this wasn't about what she owed him. This was about what she owed herself. Elena started mapping the theft. It was careful, sophisticated. Someone close enough to know the systems, but smart enough to skim small. Nothing dramatic. Just a percentage here and there that added up over time. The kind of thing that could go unnoticed for years if no one looked hard enough. She was 3 weeks into her investigation when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something, instinct, curiosity, the part of her that had stopped being afraid made her pick up. Elena Varelli? The voice was male, smooth, controlled. Who is this? My name is Dorian Vance. I represent certain interests in the city that occasionally align with, let's call it progressive change. Her grip tightened on the phone. I don't know what that means. Yes, you do. You've been asking questions, watching, learning. A pause. You're quite good at being invisible when you want to be. Ice flooded her veins. Are you threatening me? The opposite. I'm offering you a conversation. There's a cafe on Morrison and 5th. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Come alone. Or don't come at all. Your choice. The line went dead. Elena stared at her phone, heart hammering against her ribs. Every instinct screamed danger. This was how people disappeared, how curiosity became a fatal mistake. But underneath the fear was something else, something that had been growing since the night Adrian handed her divorce papers. Hunger. Not for revenge. Not yet. For understanding. For power. For the ability to look at men like Adrian Cade and not feel small. The cafe was busy when she arrived. Morrison and 5th sat in a neighborhood that was gentrifying in painful slow motion, old brick buildings fighting against new glass condos, coffee shops next to pawn shops. She spotted him immediately. Corner table, back to the wall, mid-40s, salt and pepper hair, suit that was expensive but not showy. He watched her approach with eyes that cataloged everything and revealed nothing. Thank you for coming, Dorian said, gestured to the chair across from him. Coffee? Answers. Elena sat but didn't relax. How do you know who I am? You're Adrian Cade's ex-wife. That makes you notable. He sipped his espresso. You're also a woman who spent the past 4 months teaching herself forensic accounting and surveillance techniques. That makes you interesting. Her stomach dropped. You've been watching me. Protecting you, actually. You've been sloppy a few times. Lucky you're not the only person interested in the Cade organization's structural weaknesses. Who are you? I already told you. Dorian Vance. I build things. What kind of things? Opportunities, leverage, alternative power structures. He set down his cup. I'm interested in creating systems that don't rely on fear and brutality, which means I'm interested in dismantling systems that do. Elena's pulse was a drumline. You want to take down Adrian? I want to create space for something better. If that requires certain existing organizations to collapse under the weight of their own corruption, then yes, I want that very much. He leaned forward slightly. The question is, what do you want, Elena? What did she want? A month ago, she would have said safety, anonymity, enough distance from Adrian Cade that she could pretend the marriage had never happened. But she'd tasted something in the past few months, the satisfaction of uncovering secrets, of seeing patterns no one else noticed, of being underestimated and using that as a weapon. I want to understand, she said slowly. I want to know how his empire works, where it's weak. And then? She met his eyes. I don't know yet. Dorian smiled. It was a careful expression, calculated. That's an honest answer. I appreciate honesty. He slid a phone across the table. New. Burner. This number connects to me. Use it when you find something worth sharing, and you will find things, Elena. You have a gift for seeing what powerful men try to hide. What do you get out of this? Information, insight. And eventually, when the time is right, a partner who understands that real power doesn't come from fear. It comes from knowing exactly where to apply pressure. She picked up the phone. It was heavier than it looked. Or maybe that was just the weight of the choice. One more thing, Dorian said as she stood to leave. Adrian will find out eventually. That you're digging, that you're involved. When he does, there's no going back. Good, Elena said, and meant it. The next 3 months were a masterclass in controlled obsession. Elena moved through the city like a ghost, collecting fragments of information that individually meant nothing but together painted a picture of an empire rotting from the inside. She learned that Adrian's enforcer, Marcus Chen, was skimming from protection payments to fund a gambling addiction. That the shipment losses weren't random, they were deliberate, orchestrated by a mid-level logistics manager named Graves, who was selling cargo manifests to competitors. That Adrian's own cousin, Vincent, was inflating construction costs and pocketing the difference. But the biggest revelation came from the most unexpected source, Adrian's mother. Katerina Cade was a legend. The woman who'd built the organization from her late husband's bloody inheritance, who'd raised Adrian to be ruthless, who was supposed to have retired 5 years ago, but still held enough influence to shift power with a single phone call. Elena found her by accident. A charity gala, the kind of event where the city's elite pretended to care about art or children or whatever cause justified the networking. She'd gone on a whim, wearing a dress she'd bought with Adrian's money and feeling like a spy in enemy territory. Katerina was holding court near the bar, 70 years old and sharper than most people half her age. Diamond earrings that could fund a small revolution, eyes that missed nothing. Their eyes met across the room. Katerina's expression flickered. Recognition, calculation, something that might have been amusement. She excused herself from her conversation and walked directly to Elena. "You're her," Katerina said. No preamble. "The 4-hour wife." Elena's throat went tight. "Mrs. Cade." "Just Katerina. I don't use his father's name anymore." She signaled the bartender. "Whiskey. Neat, too." They sat at a table near the windows, the gala continuing around them in waves of false laughter and champagne politics. "He didn't tell me he was getting married," Katerina said. "I found out from my accountant. Imagine that. My own son. He's good at keeping secrets. He's good at being afraid." Katerina sipped her whiskey. "You terrified him." Elena nearly choked. "I did? Not you specifically. What you represented. Connection. Vulnerability. Things that get people killed in our world." She studied Elena with eyes that had watched empires rise and fall. "He thought marrying you would prove something, that he could be normal, human. But the moment he said those vows, he panicked, realized what he'd done. So he cut you loose before you became a liability." The explanation landed like a punch. Not because it absolved Adrian, it didn't, but because it confirmed what Elena had suspected. She'd never mattered. She'd been an experiment, a test of his own capacity for normalcy that he'd failed within hours. "Why are you telling me this?" Elena asked. Katerina's smile was all edges. "Because you're still here, still in the city. I have people who watch, who report. You could have taken his money and disappeared, started fresh somewhere warm. Instead, you're learning, watching, preparing." She leaned closer. "That interests me. I'm not trying to hurt him." "Liar." Katerina's voice was silk over steel. "But that's okay. He could use some hurting, keeps a man sharp, or destroys him. Either way, it's educational." Elena's hands were shaking. She hid them under the table. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing yet. But when you're ready, when you've learned enough, gathered enough, become dangerous enough, come find me." Katerina stood, finishing her whiskey in one elegant swallow. "I built that empire. I know every crack in its foundation, and I'm tired of watching my son's fear make him sloppy." She left Elena sitting there, mind racing, understanding that she'd just been handed something more dangerous than information. She'd been handed permission. The call to Dorian came 2 days later. "I found the source of the financial hemorrhaging," Elena said. No preamble. "And it's worse than theft." They met in a parking garage this time. Concrete and shadow and the distant hum of traffic. Dorian arrived alone, listened while Elena laid out everything she'd found. The skimming, the theft, the internal corruption. And then she told him about Katerina. Dorian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried something she hadn't heard before. Excitement. "His own mother. That's spectacular. Do you understand what this means? That Adrian's empire is weaker than anyone knows. More than that, it means we can fracture it from the inside. Turn his own organization against him, not with violence, with truth, with exposure." Dorian's eyes gleamed. "Elena, you've just handed me the key to the entire structure. What happens now? Now we move carefully, precisely. We feed the right information to the right people, create pressure. Let the organization tear itself apart while Adrian scrambles to hold it together." He met her gaze. "But you need to be ready. Once this starts, it accelerates. There's no pause button, no going back." Elena thought about the penthouse, the divorce papers, the way Adrian had looked through her like she was already gone. "I'm ready," she said. The first domino fell 3 weeks later. Marcus Chen was arrested, not by regular police, they were bought and paid for, but by federal agents who'd received an anonymous tip about offshore accounts and a paper trail that connected him to 3 unsolved homicides. The kind of tip that came with enough documentation to make it impossible to ignore. Marcus lasted 2 days before he started talking. Gave up names, locations, details about how the Cade organization functioned that only someone on the inside could know. Adrian had him killed before he could testify. It was sloppy, desperate, the kind of move that showed panic. The second domino was Graves, his competitor connections exposed, his theft quantified. Adrian discovered it during an internal audit triggered by Marcus's arrest. Graves disappeared. So did his family. But the paranoia had already metastasized. Adrian started seeing betrayal everywhere. Purge lieutenants who'd been loyal for decades. Tightened control so viciously that people started looking for exits. And in an organization built on fear, that kind of instability was contagious. Elena watched it happen through Dorian's network, a web of informants, surveillance, and strategic leaks that made everything look organic, natural, like the empire was just collapsing under its own weight. She should have felt guilty. These were real people dying, disappearing, losing everything because of information she'd provided. But she didn't feel guilty. She felt awake. The confrontation with Vincent happened at a restaurant Elena didn't know existed until Dorian took her there. Private room, the kind of place where deals were made and bodies were buried, sometimes literally, sometimes metaphorically, sometimes both. Vincent Cade was younger than Adrian by 5 years, softer. He'd grown up adjacent to power without having to build it himself. Now he sat across from Elena and Dorian looking like a man who'd just realized the trap had already sprung. "I don't understand what you want," Vincent said. His voice shook, just slightly. "We want you to testify," Dorian said calmly. "We want you to confirm what we already know, that Adrian has been systematically stealing from the organization, from his own people, that the construction fraud goes all the way to the top." "He'll kill me." "He's going to kill you anyway." Elena spoke for the first time. Vincent's eyes snapped to her. "You think he doesn't know about the inflated contracts? About the money you've been moving? He knows. He's just waiting for the right moment to make an example." Vincent's face went pale. "You're her, the wife. Ex-wife. You're doing this because he divorced you?" "I'm doing this because he's a parasite." The words came out harder than she intended. "And parasites die when you expose them to light." Vincent looked between them, calculating, terrified. "If I do this, if I testify, what do I get?" "Protection," Dorian said. "A new identity, enough money to disappear properly, and the satisfaction of not dying in a basement." It took Vincent 2 hours to agree. The testimony went to Katerina first. She requested a meeting. Neutral ground. A gallery that was closed for renovation where they could talk among canvas-covered sculptures and the smell of fresh paint. Katerina arrived with 2 bodyguards who waited outside. She looked at the documentation Elena had compiled. Hundreds of pages of financial records, testimony, proof of systematic theft, with the kind of focus most people reserve for surgery. When she finally looked up, her expression was unreadable. "My son is stealing from his own organization." "Yes," Elena said. "Not just skimming, not just being greedy. He's systematically looting it, bleeding it dry, while making everyone think it's external threats, competitors, betrayal from the ranks." Dorian stepped forward. "He's burning his own empire for cash because he's afraid, paranoid, losing control." Katerina was quiet for a long time, then, "I built this over 40 years, survived wars, betrayals, the death of my husband, and the birth of something I thought would last. And my son, is destroying it because he's too much of a coward to lead properly." "What will you do?" Elena asked. Katerina's smile was winter itself. "What any mother would do. Teach him consequences." The board meeting happened 3 days later. Elena wasn't there. She watched from Dorian's surveillance feed, safe in an apartment she didn't recognize, surrounded by screens that showed her the destruction she'd helped engineer. The room was full of the organization's highest tier, men who'd built fortunes on violence and fear. And at the head of the table, Katerina Cade, presiding over her son's execution without raising her voice. She presented the evidence methodically. Every theft, every betrayal, every lie Adrian had told while bleeding the organization dry. The room went from skeptical to stunned to furious. Adrian tried to defend himself, tried to deflect, but Katerina had taught him too well. He couldn't lie to people who'd been trained by her. The vote was swift. Adrian Cade was removed from power, stripped of control. His assets frozen, his authority dissolved, his empire carved up and redistributed among people who'd been waiting years for this opportunity. He left the building under guard, broken, disgraced, erased. Elena watched him go and felt nothing, not triumph, not satisfaction, just the cold clarity of someone who'd learned exactly what she was capable of. Dorian found her standing by the windows an hour later. The sun was setting, painting the city in blood-orange light. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Different," she said. Then, more honestly, scared. Of what? Of how easy that was. How good it felt to watch him fall. Dorian was quiet. Then, power is like that. Intoxicating, dangerous. The question is what you do with it now that you have it. Elena turned to face him. What happens now? Now we build. The organization needs restructuring, new leadership, Katerina's backing, but she won't do it herself. She wants someone younger, someone who understands that the old ways are dying. He met her eyes. Someone like you. I can't. You already have. You dismantled a criminal empire using nothing but information and strategic thinking. You turned his mother against him. You saw weaknesses no one else noticed. Dorian stepped closer. Elena, you're not the woman Adrian married. You're not even the woman he divorced. You're something else now. What? Dangerous. The word sat between them like a promise and a threat. Outside, the city continued. Indifferent. Relentless. Full of people who had no idea that the power structure holding them hostage had just fractured beyond repair. And somewhere in that city, Adrian Cade was learning what it felt like to be discarded, to be nothing. Elena thought about the penthouse, the divorce papers, the 4 hours that had changed everything. And she realized being thrown away hadn't destroyed her. It had freed her. The phone in her pocket buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Elena Varelli? The voice was wrong, tight with something that sounded like desperation. This is Adrian. We need to talk. Right now. I know what you did. I know you were involved. And if you don't meet me, if you don't explain, there will be consequences. Her pulse spiked, not with fear, with anticipation. Where? She asked. The penthouse. 1 hour. Come alone. The line went dead. Dorian was watching her. That was him. He wants to meet. It's a trap. I know. Elena picked up her jacket, checked her phone, the burner Dorian had given her. But I'm going anyway. Elena, he doesn't get to summon me and expect compliance, not anymore. She met Dorian's eyes. I'm going. But I'm not going as his victim. I'm going as the person who destroyed everything he built. And I'm going to watch him understand exactly what that means. Dorian studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Take this. He handed her a small device. Panic button. Press it if things go wrong. I'll have people nearby. Elena pocketed it, walked to the door, stopped, looked back. Thank you, she said, for seeing something in me I didn't see in myself. I didn't create it, Dorian replied. I just gave you permission to stop hiding it. The elevator ride to the penthouse was 43 floors of controlled breathing and racing thoughts. She'd been here before. Stood in this exact spot wearing a wedding dress and stupid, impossible hope. Now she was here wearing armor made of information and the cold satisfaction of revenge not yet complete. The doors opened. Adrian stood in the center of the room, backlit by the city he'd lost control of. He looked smaller than she remembered, worn. His suit was perfect, but his eyes were haunted. You came, he said. You threatened me. I wanted to hear it in person. I didn't. He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. The gesture was so human, it was almost disarming. Almost. I need to know why. Why what? Why you destroyed me. His voice cracked, just slightly. I gave you everything. Money, security, freedom. And you thanked me by burning my entire world down. Elena laughed. It was a bitter sound. You gave me nothing. You married me on a whim and divorced me 4 hours later like I was a mistake you could just erase. You threw me away, Adrian, like I was garbage. I was protecting you. Bullshit, the word cut through his excuse. You were protecting yourself from feeling something, from being vulnerable, from being human for 5 goddamn seconds. She stepped closer. You want to know why I destroyed you? Because you taught me that mercy is weakness, that power is the only thing that matters, that people are disposable. That's not. I learned from the best. Another step. She was close enough to see the micro expressions he couldn't hide. The fear, the desperation. You created this, Adrian. You married a woman who believed in second chances and threw her away. But what you didn't count on was that she'd learn, adapt, become exactly what you are, except better. You worked with Vance, he said. Statement, not question. You've been feeding him information for months. Yes. You turned my mother against me. No. You did that yourself. I just showed her the proof. His jaw clenched. You ruined me. I freed you. Elena's voice was soft now, deadly. You were so busy building an empire on fear you forgot that fear makes people desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. I just helped those mistakes come to light. Adrian stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You've changed. You noticed. The woman I married would never, the woman you married doesn't exist anymore. You killed her when you handed her divorce papers at 4 a.m. without explanation. Elena pulled out the panic button, showed it to him. This is connected to people who will be here in under 3 minutes if I press it. So whatever you're planning, whatever threat you think will work, understand that I'm not afraid of you anymore. I'm not threatening you. The words hung there. Adrian's shoulders sagged. The mask cracked completely. What was left looked too much like a person. I'm not threatening you, he repeated quietly. I'm asking you to stop. Please. Whatever comes next, whatever Vance is planning, I'm asking you to walk away. Take the money. Disappear. Live your life. Why would I do that? Because this path you're on, it doesn't end well. I know. I've walked it. You think you're in control, but you're not. You're just falling in a direction that feels like flying. His eyes searched hers. You're not me, Elena. You're better than this. Better than what? Better than you? She laughed again, sharper. You're right. I am better than you. I don't build empires on corpses. I don't throw people away when they become inconvenient, and I don't beg for mercy after I've shown none. Then what do you want? His voice broke. What will make this stop? Elena looked at him, really looked, saw the man who'd married her in a penthouse and destroyed their marriage before dawn, saw the fear and greed and weakness that had been there all along, just hidden under layers of reputation and violence. And she realized she didn't want anything from him anymore. The revenge she'd craved, the understanding she'd sought, it was already complete. He was already nothing. I want you to understand, she said finally, that you don't get to discard people without consequences, that your power was always an illusion, and that the woman you threw away became the one who burned your entire world down. She turned toward the elevator. Elena. She stopped, didn't look back. I'm sorry, Adrian said. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. The elevator doors opened. Elena stepped inside. It's worth nothing, she said, and descended. Dorian was waiting outside. He took one look at her face and nodded. It's done? It's done. How do you feel? Elena looked up at the building, at the penthouse 43 floors above where a man who'd once seemed untouchable was learning what powerlessness tasted like. Free, she said, but as they drove away through streets that glittered with promise and danger and possibility, Elena felt the panic button still clutched in her hand, and knew, with cold certainty, that freedom this sharp came with its own kind of cost, one she hadn't finished paying yet. The city looked different at night when you knew how it worked. Elena stood at the window of Dorian's operations center, a converted loft in the industrial district that smelled like coffee and electronic equipment, and watched traffic move through intersections like blood through arteries. 48 hours since the confrontation with Adrian. 48 hours since she'd walked away from the penthouse and felt something close to closure. Except closure was a lie people told themselves when they wanted the story to be over. Behind her, screens glowed with information feeds, financial transactions, police scanner chatter, security camera footage from a dozen locations across the city. Dorian's team, 5 people whose names she still didn't know, who moved through the space with the efficiency of surgeons, monitored the slow-motion collapse of the Cade organization. Coffee's cold. Dorian appeared at her elbow, holding a fresh cup. He'd shed his jacket hours ago, sleeves rolled up, looking less like the controlled strategist and more like someone who ran on caffeine and calculated risk. Elena took the cup. Thanks? You should sleep. So should you. He smiled, tired. Touché. The main screen flickered. Marlena, the team's surveillance specialist, 30-something with purple hair and the kind of focus that made most people uncomfortable, pulled up new footage. We've got movement at the Cade estate. 3 vehicles. Looks like Katerina's people. Dorian moved closer to the screens. Elena followed. The estate was a fortress masquerading as a mansion. 20 acres of manicured grounds and reinforced security that had survived 2 attempted coups and a federal investigation. Now it showed signs of chaos. Lights on in rooms that were usually dark. People moving with purpose instead of routine. She's consolidating, Dorian said quietly, taking control of assets before anyone else can. Is that good for us? Elena asked. Depends on whether she remembers you're the one who handed her the ammunition. The words landed cold. Elena had been trying not to think about that part. About the fact that Katerina Cade, the woman who'd built an empire on calculated brutality, now knew exactly what Elena was capable of, knew she'd been instrumental in Adrian's fall. She thanked me, Elena said, at the gallery, after she saw the evidence. She said I'd done the family a favor. And you believed her? Elena didn't answer, because she hadn't believed Katerina. But she'd wanted to think that exposing Adrian's theft and paranoia had been the right move, that justice and revenge could occupy the same space. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Not a request. V. Vincent. She showed Dorian the message. His jaw tightened. Where is he? Doesn't say. Don't respond. Dorian pulled out his own phone, started typing. Vincent's supposed to be in protective custody. If he's reaching out independently, then someone got to him. Marlena didn't look up from her screens. Or he's playing both sides. He wouldn't. But Elena's voice lacked conviction. Vincent had folded fast when they'd cornered him, agreed to testify against Adrian with minimal pressure. At the time, she'd thought it was self-preservation. Now she wondered if it had been too easy. Another message. I know where you are. I'm downstairs. Alone. 5 minutes or I leave and you lose what I know. Dorian's expression went dark. That's a threat. Or desperation? Elena was already moving toward the door. Elena, 5 minutes, that's all. Not alone. She stopped, looked back. Dorian was standing in a way that suggested he'd physically block her exit if necessary. Behind him, the team had stopped working, watching. I have the panic button, Elena said, which does nothing if someone puts a bullet in your head before you can press it. Dorian's voice stayed level, but something underneath it vibrated. Vincent showing up here unannounced, threatening a timeline. That's either a setup or he's compromised. Either way, you don't go alone. Then come with me. I will. He grabbed his jacket, nodded to Marlena. Eyes on all exits. Anyone follows us out, I want to know immediately. The industrial district was quiet at 2 a.m. Just the hum of streetlights and distant traffic. Vincent's car was parked half a block away. Expensive sedan, tinted windows, engine running. He stood beside it, hands visible, looking like a man who'd aged a decade in 2 days. Elena approached with Dorian slightly behind her, close enough to intervene, far enough to give the illusion of space. You brought backup, Vincent said, not quite accusatory. You ambushed me at my location. Elena stopped 10 feet away. What do you want, Vincent? He looked past her at Dorian. This needs to be private. Not happening. Dorian's voice could have cut glass. Vincent's hands flexed, nervous energy. Fine. Fine. But what I'm about to tell you, it changes everything. And I need assurances. You already have assurances. Protection, money, a new identity. That was before. Vincent stepped closer. Elena's muscles tensed. Before I found out what Katerina's really planning. The street felt colder. What are you talking about? The reorganization, the new leadership structure. You think she's dismantling Adrian's empire to build something better? Vincent laughed, bitter, scared. She's using this to consolidate complete control. And once she does, once she's eliminated everyone who remembers the old guard, she's going to start removing loose ends. Loose ends like you. Dorian's tone suggested he'd already calculated this possibility. Loose ends like all of us, me, you, Elena. Vincent's eyes locked on hers. You especially. You're the one who exposed Adrian, who proved that even family can be taken down if they become a liability. You think Katerina's going to let that kind of precedent exist? Elena's pulse was hammering. She gave me her word. Her word. Vincent's expression twisted. You really don't understand how this works, do you? Words mean nothing. Promises mean nothing. The only thing that matters is whether you're useful or you're a threat. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is a list. Targets. People Katerina's planning to eliminate once the transition is complete. I got it from her head of security. Cost me everything I had in offshore accounts, but I got it. He held out the envelope. Elena didn't move. How do we know it's real? Dorian asked. You don't, but in 72 hours, the first 3 names on that list are going to have very unfortunate accidents. And if you wait to verify, you'll be attending funerals instead of preventing them. Elena took the envelope, opened it with fingers that had started shaking. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed. No signature, 23 names. She scanned the list, stopped breathing. Marcus Chen's widow. The lawyer who'd filed Adrian's divorce papers. A city councilman who'd helped launder money. And at the bottom, Dorian Vance. Elena Varelli. Jesus! The word came out strangled. Dorian took the paper, read it with the kind of stillness that preceded violence. When he looked up, his eyes were flat. When did you get this? 6 hours ago. I've been trying to figure out if it's leverage or a death sentence. Vincent backed toward his car. I'm telling you because I need allies. Because if Katerina's cleaning house, none of us survive alone. What do you want? Elena asked. I want to disappear. Really disappear. Not the half-assed witness protection you arranged. I want out of the country. New face. New identity. Enough money to never surface again. He opened his car door. You get me that? I'll give you everything. Katerina's accounts. Her security protocols, the locations of every safe house and weapons cache in her network. That's not a small ask. Neither is surviving the next week. Vincent got in the car. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, I'm gone with or without your help. And if I go, that information goes with me. He drove away. Taillights disappearing into the dark. Elena and Dorian stood in the empty street. The list felt like it was burning through her jacket pocket. Could be fake, Dorian said finally. Designed to make us paranoid, turn us against Katerina. Could be real. Yes. They walked back to the loft in silence. Inside, Marlena had pulled up everything she could find on recent deaths in the organization. 3 in the past week, all ruled accidental or natural causes, all connected to the old power structure. Pattern's there if you want to see it, Marlena said, but it's not proof. Elena spread the list on the table, studied the names. Some she recognized, others were unfamiliar. But the placement was strategic. People who knew too much, who'd been close to Adrian, who could provide testimony or evidence if things went legal. And at the bottom, her name. Dorian's name. Permanent markers of threat. We need to verify, Dorian said. He was pacing now. Controlled energy looking for an outlet. Independently confirm whether Katerina's actually planning this or if Vincent's trying to manipulate us. How? I have someone inside her security detail. Low level. But they might have access to scheduling, movements, anything that correlates with this list. And if it's real? Dorian stopped pacing, looked at her. Then we have a choice. Run or fight. Running didn't work for the first 3 names on this list. No, It didn't. The loft felt smaller suddenly, walls pressing in. Elena's hands were still shaking. She pressed them flat against the table, focused on breathing. I brought her the evidence, Elena said quietly. I showed her what Adrian was doing. I actually thought I was helping her see the truth. You were. Was I? Or did I just give her the excuse she needed to purge everyone who remembered she wasn't always in complete control? Elena's voice cracked. Vincent's right. I set a precedent. I proved that family loyalty means nothing if you're a liability. And now she's going to use that same logic on me. Dorian moved around the table, stood close. Hey, look at me. She did. His eyes were steady, present. You made decisions with the information you had. Adrian was stealing from his own organization. That was real. The corruption was real. Exposing it was the right move. Was it? Elena, people are dying, Dorian, because I wanted revenge, because I couldn't just take Adrian's money and disappear like a normal person. I had to prove something. And now there's a list with my name on it, and I don't know if I'm the hero or the villain in this story anymore. The words hung there, raw, honest. Dorian's expression softened, just slightly. You're neither. You're someone trying to survive in a world designed to chew people up. That's all any of us are. His phone buzzed. He checked it, went very still. What? My contact inside Katerina's security. They just confirmed unusual activity. Multiple teams deployed to surveillance and acquisition. Targets matched the first 5 names on Vincent's list. The floor dropped out. When? Elena barely recognized her own voice. Starting tomorrow night. 24 hours. Marlena pulled up maps, started plotting locations based on the names. Thomas Rivera, former accountant, lived in a brownstone in Riverside. Jessica Mora, logistics coordinator, apartment in the financial district. David Park, muscle, who'd worked Adrian's personal security, last known address in Koreatown. All of them about to die. We have to warn them, Elena said. And say what? Dorian's voice was gentle but firm. That a criminal organization is planning to kill them? These people know the life. They knew the risks. Calling them just burns our intel and doesn't save anyone. So we just let them die? We use the time to prepare, to figure out how to stop this before it gets to us. Elena stared at the maps, at the names that would become corpses in less than 24 hours, at the machinery of violence she'd helped set in motion. I can't, she grabbed her jacket. I can't just sit here and watch this happen. Elena, Thomas Rivera, the accountant. He has kids. I saw them in the background check, 2 daughters. They're going to kill him in front of his family unless someone warns him. And if you warn him, Katerina knows we have intelligence, knows we're aware of her plans. She moves up the timeline and we all die tonight instead of next week. So what's your solution? We hide? We run? Elena's voice rose. I didn't burn Adrian's empire down to become another person looking over their shoulder for the rest of their life. Then what do you want? I want to stop her. I want to take the woman who's planning to kill me and remove her from power before she gets the chance. The loft went silent. Marlena stopped typing. The rest of the team looked up from their stations. Even Dorian seemed surprised by the directness. You want to go after Katerina Cade? He said slowly. I want to survive. If that means going after her, then yes. She's not Adrian. She's smarter, more connected. She built this empire before you were born, and she's survived every challenge to her power for 4 decades. You don't just go after someone like that. But it can be done. Theoretically. Then help me do it. Elena met his eyes. You said you wanted to build something better, that you were tired of empires built on fear. This is your chance. We take down Katerina. We create space for actual change, real change, not just replacing one monster with another. Dorian studied her for a long moment. You understand what you're proposing. This isn't exposing financial fraud. This is declaring war on the most dangerous woman in the city. I know. People will die. Maybe us. Probably us. I know that too. Something shifted in his expression. A decision being made in real time. 48 hours. That's what Vincent gave us. We spend that time building a case, finding leverage, identifying her vulnerabilities, and if we can't find a clean way to stop her, If the only option is violence, we walk away. We take Vincent's deal and disappear. Agreed? Elena wanted to say yes, wanted to be reasonable, but reasonable people didn't end up on kill lists. Agreed, she lied. The next 24 hours blurred into a fever dream of research and planning. Marlena pulled up everything they had on Katerina's network: financial structures, real estate holdings, security rotations, known associates. The woman's life was a maze of shell companies and proxy arrangements, but patterns emerged if you looked hard enough. She moved money through art galleries and charity foundations, owned property under her grandchildren's names, kept multiple residences but favored a penthouse in Meridian Tower, older building, pre-war construction, the kind of place where neighbors minded their own business and security was private. She's there 3 nights a week, Marlena said, highlighting the location on a map. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, clockwork. Security? Dorian asked. 4-person team, rotating shifts, all former military or federal. These aren't street thugs, they're professionals. Elena studied the building layout. 12 floors. Katerina's penthouse took up the entire top level. Single elevator access with biometric controls. Emergency stairs that were alarmed and monitored. It's a fortress, she said. Most good hiding places are. Her phone buzzed. Text from Vincent. Time's running out. Need your answer. She showed Dorian. He frowned. We're not ready. We're never going to be ready. Not for this. Elena, Thomas Rivera's daughters are named Sophia and Maya, 6 and 8 years old. In 12 hours, someone's going to walk into their home and kill their father while they hide in a closet or scream for help or... Her voice broke. I can't carry that. I can't know that and do nothing. Dorian's expression was unreadable. So what do you propose? We warn Rivera. Quietly. Give him a head start. That buys us time and maybe saves a life. It also tips our hand. Then we move fast. We contact Vincent. Get his intel on Katerina's network. Use it to build leverage before she can react. That's not a plan. That's improvisation. Improvisation kept me alive this long. Dorian looked at Marlena. She shrugged. I can set up a burner contact for Rivera, anonymous tip, gives him 6 hours head start before anyone notices. Do it, Elena said. Elena, Dorian started. Do it, or I walk out that door and do it myself. The challenge hung there. Dorian's jaw worked. Finally, he nodded to Marlena. She made the call. Thomas Rivera was warned at 4 a.m. By 4:30, he'd disappeared with his family. By 6 a.m., Katerina's people arrived at his empty brownstone and found nothing but hastily packed drawers and a note that said, "You're not as smart as you think." The message reached Dorian's contact at 6:15. She knows, Marlena said, pale. She knows someone interfered. Can she trace it to us? Elena asked. Not immediately, but she's going to start looking, and when she looks, she finds things. Dorian was already on his phone. Vincent, we're out of time. I need everything you promised, now. The meeting happened in a parking structure. Concrete and exhaust fumes and the permanent tension of a space designed for transition. Vincent arrived looking worse than before. Hadn't slept. Kept checking over his shoulder. Rivera's gone, he said. No preamble. Katerina's going insane. Pulled her entire security team for emergency protocols. Someone talked. We talked, Elena said. We warned him, gave him a chance. Vincent's expression cycled through shock, anger, resignation. You just signed all our death warrants. We were already on the list, now we're just moving up the timeline. Dorian stepped closer. You said you had intel, Katerina's network, security protocols, safe houses. I need all of it. And I need guarantees, real guarantees, not promises. I can get you out of the country, Dorian said. Singapore. New identity. Enough money to disappear permanently. But I need everything, and I need it in the next 6 hours. Vincent pulled out a USB drive, held it like a weapon. This is everything. Accounts, property, personnel files, even some things I'm not sure you want to know. He paused. Including proof that Katerina ordered the hit on her own husband 30 years ago. The parking structure felt airless. Her husband died in a car accident, Elena said. That's what the report said. This file contains testimony from the mechanic who cut the brake lines, paid by Katerina. Kept quiet for 3 decades because she promised to kill his entire family if he ever talked. He died last year. Cancer. Left this behind for his daughter. Vincent handed over the drive. Use it carefully. That information doesn't just take down Katerina, it burns the entire family legacy to the ground, including Adrian. Dorian pocketed the drive. The extraction? 48 hours. I'll text you the location. Have the documents ready. Vincent backed toward his car, stopped, looked at Elena. You know this ends bloody, right? There's no version of this where everyone walks away. I know. And you're okay with that? Elena thought about Sofia and Maya Rivera, about Adrian's face when she'd told him his empire was built on sand, about every person on that list who'd wake up tomorrow not knowing it was their last day. I'm okay with trying, she said. Vincent left. Dorian and Elena stood in the parking structure holding a USB drive that contained the complete destruction of a 4-decade-old criminal empire. We need to verify this, Dorian said. Make sure it's real before we do anything. Back at the loft, Marlena plugged in the drive. Her eyes went wide. Holy shit! The files were extensive, detailed, account numbers with transaction histories going back decades, property deeds under multiple aliases, personnel files with photographs, addresses, criminal histories, communication logs, audio recordings, video surveillance, and buried in a folder labeled Insurance, a full confession from the mechanic who'd killed Katerina's husband, complete with dates, payments, and instructions that came directly from her. This is, Marlena trailed off. This is everything. This could bring down half the city's power structure. Or get us all killed. Dorian was scrolling through files. If Katerina finds out we have this, she's already trying to kill us. Might as well make it count. Elena pulled up the confession. Read it 3 times. Each pass made her feel colder. Katerina Cade had built her empire on her husband's grave, had raised Adrian in the shadow of a murder she'd orchestrated, had spent 30 years consolidating power while everyone believed she was the grieving widow who'd stepped up to save her family. It was brilliant, horrifying, absolutely ruthless. We leak this, Elena said. We send it to every news outlet, every federal agency, every competitor who's been waiting for an opening. We drown her in exposure. That's a nuclear option, Dorian said. You release this. You don't just destroy Katerina. You destabilize every power structure in the city, create a vacuum, and vacuums get filled with violence. Better violence now than systematic murder forever. Is it? He turned to face her. You're talking about starting a war, real war, with real casualties. People who have nothing to do with this will die in the crossfire. People are already dying. Elena's voice rose. Rivera's family is in hiding. 4 other people on that list are going to be corpses by the end of the week. And we are next. So forgive me if I'm not worried about theoretical casualties when there are actual bodies piling up. I'm not saying don't act. I'm saying act smart. We use this as leverage. Approach Katerina. Negotiate. Show her we have the information and offer a trade. She backs off. We keep it quiet. You think she negotiates? I think everyone negotiates when the alternative is total destruction. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to think there was a version of this that didn't end in blood. But she'd seen enough now, learned enough. The Empire didn't negotiate. It absorbed or eliminated threats. We don't have time for negotiations, she said. The hit list is active, right now. Every hour we wait is another chance for her to move against us. Then we move first. Dorian pulled out his phone, started typing. But we do it strategically. We approach her. Tonight. Show her what we have. Give her one chance to stand down. If she refuses, if she even hesitates, we release everything. And if she kills us the moment we walk in, then Marlena has instructions to release the files automatically if she doesn't hear from us every 6 hours. He looked at his team. Right? Marlena nodded. Already set up. Dead man's switch. The files go to 15 different outlets simultaneously if I don't input the code. It was risky, insane, exactly the kind of move that got people killed in movies in real life. When? Elena asked. Tonight. Midnight. Meridian Tower. We request a meeting. Come prepared. And pray she values her legacy more than she values revenge. The hours before midnight moved like drowning. Elena tried to sleep. Couldn't. Tried to eat. Couldn't. Sat in the loft watching Marlena and the team prepare contingencies and backup plans and fail-safes that probably wouldn't matter if Katerina decided bullets were simpler than conversation. Dorian sat beside her at some point. Didn't say anything, just sat. "You don't have to come," Elena said finally. "This was my choice, my revenge. You could walk away." "Could say the same to you." "It's my name on the list." "It's my name too." He looked at her, really looked. "Besides, I told you I wanted to build something better. Can't do that if I run every time things get dangerous." "This is past dangerous." "I know." He smiled, tired. "But I've never been great at knowing when to quit." At 11:30, they left the loft. Dorian drove. Elena sat in the passenger seat, watching the city slide past and thinking about all the choices that had led here. The marriage, the divorce, the decision to investigate instead of disappear. Every step had felt small at the time. Manageable. Now she was driving toward a confrontation with a woman who'd killed her own husband and built an empire on the proceeds. Meridian Tower was beautiful in the way old money always was. Understated, permanent. The kind of building that suggested it had been there before the city and would remain after. They parked 2 blocks away, walked the rest. Dorian had a gun tucked in a shoulder holster. Elena had the panic button. And both of them had the USB drive, original in Dorian's pocket, backup copy already with Marlena. The lobby was marble and brass and a doorman who looked at them like they'd tracked mud on expensive carpet. "We're here to see Katerina Cade," Dorian said. "Do you have an appointment?" "Tell her Elena Varelli and Dorian Vance are here. She'll understand." The doorman made a call, spoke quietly, hung up. His expression shifted, less disdain, more concern. 12th floor. She's expecting you." The elevator ride was glass-walled. Elena watched the city spread out below them, lights and darkness, and all the lives being lived without any idea what was happening 12 floors up. The doors opened directly into Katerina's penthouse. She was waiting in the living room, seated, composed, wearing a silk blouse and slacks like it wasn't midnight, and she wasn't meeting with the 2 people who'd destroyed her son's empire. 2 security guards flanked the elevator. Professional, alert, hands near weapons, but not on them. "Elena," Katerina's voice was warm, almost friendly. "And Mr. Vance, I was wondering when you'd come see me." "You knew we would?" Dorian asked. "Of course. You warned Thomas Rivera. That required either stupidity or courage. Given your track record, I assume courage." She gestured to the chairs across from her. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." Elena didn't move. Neither did Dorian. "We'll stand," Elena said. Katerina's smile was indulgent. "Suit yourself. Though I'd think after everything you've been through, you'd appreciate the opportunity to rest. We're not here for small talk." "No. You're here because you have information you think gives you leverage. Because you believe I'm planning to kill you. Because you're desperate and scared and hoping there's a way out that doesn't end with you in a landfill." Katerina's expression didn't change. Still pleasant, still terrifying. "Am I close?" Dorian pulled out the USB drive, set it on the coffee table between them. "We have files, everything, your accounts, your properties, your security protocols, and proof that you murdered your husband 30 years ago." The room temperature dropped. Katerina looked at the drive. Didn't touch it. "I see. And you're here to what? Blackmail me? Threaten me with exposure?" "We're here to negotiate," Dorian said. "You stand down, stop the killings, remove us from your list. In exchange, we keep the information secure. And if I refuse, then it goes public, every news outlet, every federal agency, every competitor you've spent decades keeping in check. Your empire collapses, your family name gets buried in scandal, and you spend whatever time you have left fighting investigations instead of ruling." Katerina was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed. Light, genuine. "Oh, my dear children, you've done your homework. I'm impressed. Truly." She stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city. "But you've made one critical miscalculation." "What's that?" Elena asked. Katerina turned, and the pleasant mask was gone. What remained was something ancient and cold. "You assumed I care about legacy more than I care about control. That I'd choose reputation over power. That I'm afraid of exposure." She moved closer. The guards tensed. I built this empire from my husband's corpse. I've survived investigations, wars, betrayals, and challenges from people far more dangerous than you. And you think a USB drive full of information I already know exists is leverage? The confession that was created by a dying man who had nothing to lose and everything to gain from one last act of revenge. You think I didn't know he kept records? You think I haven't prepared for this exact scenario? Katerina stopped 5 feet away. The difference between us is that you're playing chess. I'm playing the long game. And in the long game, sacrifices are not just acceptable, they're necessary. Elena's throat was dry. What are you saying? I'm saying release the files, burn my reputation, destroy my legacy. None of it matters because I control the infrastructure, the people, the fear. And fear doesn't need a good reputation, it just needs to be absolute. Katerina smiled. So go ahead, do your worst, and then watch as nothing fundamentally changes except that you've marked yourselves for death. Dorian's hand moved toward his jacket. The guards reacted instantly, weapons drawn, safeties off, targeting protocols engaged in the space of a heartbeat. Don't, Katerina said. Not to the guards, to Dorian. You pull that gun, you die in this room, both of you, and the files get released anyway. Marlena's quite good at her job. I've been monitoring your operation for weeks. The floor tilted. Elena felt reality reorganize itself into a shape that had always been there, but she'd been too blind to see. You knew, she whispered. Everything, the whole time. You knew we had the files. You knew about the dead man's switch. You've been watching us plan this. Yes. Then why not just kill us? Why this? Katerina's expression softened, just slightly, almost sympathetic. Because I wanted to see if you'd take the deal, if you were smart enough to walk away. Because despite everything, I respect what you did to Adrian. He needed to fall. He was weak, sentimental. You proved that beautifully. And now? Now you have a choice, real choice, not the illusion of choice you've been operating under. Katerina gestured to the guards. They holstered their weapons but didn't relax. Work with me. Bring your skills, your network, your intelligence to my organization. Help me build something that actually lasts. Or walk out that door and see how long you survive with every resource I have committed to finding you. That's not a choice, Dorian said. His voice was steady, but Elena could hear the fury underneath. That's coercion. All employment is coercion when you examine it closely enough. I'm just being honest about the terms. Katerina moved back to her chair, sat. You have until morning to decide. After that, the offer expires and you become targets again, permanent targets. Elena looked at Dorian. At the USB drive sitting on the table like it had ever mattered. At Katerina Cade, 70 years old and more dangerous than any man Elena had ever met. We need time to discuss, she said. You have until sunrise. 6 hours. Use them wisely. Katerina picked up a glass of wine Elena hadn't noticed before. The elevator's waiting. My people will make sure you leave safely. After that, you're on your own. The descent was silent. Elena and Dorian stood on opposite sides of the elevator car, watching the city rise to meet them. In the reflection of the glass, Elena could see Dorian's face. Tight, calculating, furious. They reached the lobby, walked to the car, got in. Dorian didn't start the engine. Say it, Elena said. She played us. Completely. Let us think we had leverage when she controlled every variable the entire time. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. We walked into her home and handed her exactly what she wanted, proof that we're dangerous enough to be worth recruiting or eliminating. So what do we do? I don't know. The honesty of it hit like cold water. Dorian always knew, always had a plan, a contingency, a strategy. Hearing him admit uncertainty made everything feel more real, more dangerous. Elena's phone buzzed. Text from Marlena. Something's wrong. Lost contact with Vincent. Last ping was 20 minutes ago heading toward the port. She showed Dorian. He started the engine. We need to get back to the loft, now. If Katerina's moving against Vincent, then she's cleaning up loose ends before we make our decision. They drove fast. Traffic was light, but every red light felt like hours. Elena watched the streets blur past and thought about Vincent. Desperate, scared Vincent who'd sold out for a chance at escape. The port was 40 minutes away. Too far. Too late. Dorian's phone rang. He put it on speaker. It's Marlena. Vincent's car just went into the water. Pier 17. I've got traffic cam footage. 3 vehicles boxed him in. He tried to run. They put 2 through his windshield and pushed the car off the pier. Survivors? Dorian's voice was flat. Negative. Car sank in 30 seconds. They waited 5 minutes to confirm, then left. Professional hit. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. He was trying to escape. He wasn't a threat anymore. He had information that made him a liability. Dorian's jaw was granite. Katerina doesn't leave liabilities. They reached the loft at 1:47 a.m. The team was waiting. Marlena pulled up the footage, showed them Vincent's last moments, the panic, the futile attempt to escape, the car hitting water and disappearing beneath the surface. Elena watched it 3 times. Each viewing made her colder. She killed him while negotiating with us, she said, while offering us a choice, while pretending there was a path forward that didn't end in violence. She was proving a point, Dorian said quietly, showing us what happens to people who try to use information as leverage. Then what's the play? Marlena asked. We've got 4 hours until sunrise, until the offer expires. We don't have a play. Dorian looked at Elena. She owns the board. She's known everything from the beginning. The files, the dead man's switch, our location, all of it. We thought we were hunting. We were being herded. Elena stood, walked to the window. The city looked the same, indifferent, continuing its existence while people died and empires shifted and choices narrowed to impossible calculations. Release the files, she said. Elena, release them. All of them. Every news outlet, every agency, every single person who needs to know what Katerina Cade really is. She turned. She said it wouldn't matter. That fear doesn't need a good reputation. Let's test that theory. You understand what you're proposing. Dorian's voice carried weight. We release those files. We're not just burning Katerina. We're burning the entire structure, creating chaos. People will die. People are already dying. Vincent. Rivera's neighbors who'll get caught in the crossfire when Katerina's people come looking. Everyone on that list? You and me in 6 hours if we don't choose slavery. Elena's voice rose. At least this way it means something. At least this way the truth comes out. Marlena was watching them. I can have the files distributed in 10 minutes. Once they're out, there's no taking it back. Do it, Elena said. Dorian? Marlena looked at him. He was quiet for a long time. Then, do it. Send everything. Let the world decide what to do with the monster. Marlena's fingers flew across the keyboard. Elena watched the upload progress, watched files containing 30 years of murder and corruption and systematic violence begin copying to servers across the world. At 2:13 a.m., the first news outlet received the package. By 2:30, 3 major networks had confirmed the files were authentic. By 3, federal agencies were mobilizing. By 3:15, Katerina Cade's phone was ringing off the hook. By 3:30, her penthouse was surrounded. Elena and Dorian watched it happen through traffic cameras and news feeds, watched the city's power structure begin to collapse in real time, watched allies distance themselves, watched investigators swarm, watched the machinery of justice, slow, imperfect, corrupt, finally begin to move. She'll survive this, Dorian said. People like her always do. But she's wounded. Actually wounded. We did that. Is it enough? I don't know. Ask me in 6 hours when the hit squads come looking. But the hit squads never came. What came instead was silence. Katerina Cade, facing the complete exposure of her empire, withdrew. Not into surrender, into calculation, into the slow, patient work of damage control and resource management and figuring out who could be trusted when the entire world knew what she was. She didn't have time to hunt Elena and Dorian. She was too busy trying to prevent her entire legacy from being classified as a crime scene. Dawn broke at 6:17 a.m. Elena watched the sun paint the city gold and orange and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Not safety, not victory, but possibility. The door to the loft opened. Everyone reached for weapons. It was Katerina's head of security, alone, unarmed, hands visible. I'm here to deliver a message, he said. Talk fast, Dorian replied. Gun not quite pointed, but ready. Mrs. Cade says you've won this round. Says you're more dangerous than she calculated. Says that if you ever come near her or her family again, she'll dedicate whatever time she has left to making you suffer. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. She also says you'll be watching your backs for the rest of your lives. That's not a threat. That's just reality. He set the envelope on the floor, left. Elena opened it. Inside was a single sentence typed on expensive paper. You just declared war on something that doesn't forgive. Sleep well if you can. Dorian read it over her shoulder. Dramatic. Honest. Elena folded the paper, put it in her pocket. We're marked now, permanently. Better than being dead. Is it? Outside, the city continued. Emergency vehicles heading toward Meridian Tower. News helicopters circling. People waking up to headlines about the Cade Empire's corruption spread across every major outlet. Elena thought about Adrian, about the penthouse, about the divorce papers, and the 4 hours that had changed everything. She thought about Vincent's car sinking into dark water, about Thomas Rivera and his daughters running toward a life they'd never planned, about Katerina Cade's eyes when she'd realized Elena wasn't going to be controlled. And she understood. There was no going back. This was the point of no return. She'd burned the empire, exposed the machinery, proven that even untouchable people could be reached. And now she'd live with the consequences. Forever. So what do we do now? Marlena asked. Elena looked at Dorian. He looked back, something unspoken passing between them. Now, Elena said, we prepare for the war we just started, and we make sure that when it comes, when Katerina rebuilds enough to come after us, we're ready. How do we do that? Elena smiled. It was a sharp expression. Dangerous. We learn everything she knows. We build something better, and we make sure the next time someone tries to discard us, they understand exactly what kind of mistake that is. Outside, sirens wailed. Inside, Elena Virelli, ex-wife, survivor, catalyst, began planning for a future where she wasn't running, where she was hunting. And somewhere in a penthouse surrounded by federal agents and the ruins of a carefully constructed lie, Katerina Cade looked at the damage and understood. She'd just created exactly the kind of enemy she'd spent a lifetime preventing. Smart, motivated, angry, and completely, irrevocably free. The war didn't come with announcements. It came in the silence between heartbeats, in the weight of every shadow, in the paranoia that turned grocery store trips into tactical operations and sleep into a luxury Elena couldn't afford. 72 hours after the files went public, the city was still reeling. Federal investigators had seized 3 of Katerina's properties. 2 city councilmen had resigned. The media was running 24-hour coverage of the Cade dynasty scandal, with talking heads dissecting 30 years of corruption like it was a spectator sport. But Katerina herself remained untouched. Her lawyers were a wall of expensive suits and legal technicalities. The confession about her husband's murder was inadmissible, hearsay from a dead man with no corroborating physical evidence. The financial records showed irregularities, but nothing that couldn't be explained away as aggressive tax strategy. The personnel files were damning but not prosecutable without witnesses willing to testify, and witnesses kept disappearing. Elena watched it happen from the loft, which had transformed from operations center into fortress. Marlena had installed additional security, motion sensors, encrypted communications, a rotation of guards, people from Dorian's network who owed him favors or feared Katerina enough to pick a side. It felt like living inside a pressure cooker, waiting for the explosion. 2 more, Marlena said on the 4th day. She was looking at her screens with the kind of exhausted focus that came from too much coffee and too little hope. Jessica Mora and David Park. Both found dead this morning. Mora was a suicide. Park was a car accident. Bullshit. Elena didn't look up from the financial records she'd been studying, trying to find something, anything they'd missed, some angle that would actually stick. Katerina's cleaning house, making sure no one can corroborate the files. We can't prove that. We don't have to prove it, we know it. Dorian entered carrying takeout that smelled like grease and exhaustion. He set it on the table. No one moved to eat. The feds are backing off, he said. My contact at the bureau says they're getting pressure from above. Political pressure. Katerina still has friends in places that matter. So we exposed her for nothing. Elena's voice was flat. Vincent died for nothing. Those files that were supposed to bring her down are just… what? Entertainment? They wounded her. That's not nothing. It's not enough. The silence that followed was heavy. Everyone in the room knew she was right. They'd struck a blow. Made Katerina vulnerable. But vulnerable wasn't defeated. And in the calculus of survival, anything less than total victory was just delayed failure. Elena's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something, instinct or desperation, made her answer. Hello? Elena Virelli. The voice was male, older, careful. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm an attorney. I represent Adrian Cade. Her stomach dropped. I have nothing to say to Adrian. Mr. Cade is aware of that. This call isn't on his behalf. It's on mine. I have information about your current situation, about Katerina, and about why she's not in custody despite everything you've exposed. I'm listening. Not over the phone. In person. There's a diner on Halstead and 9th. Public. Safe. Meet me there in 1 hour. Come alone or don't come at all. The line went dead. Elena stared at her phone. Dorian was watching her. Who was that? Adrian's lawyer says he has information about Katerina. Wants to meet. Absolutely not. Dorian's response was immediate. That's a trap. Adrian working with his mother to… Adrian hates his mother. She turned on him, stripped him of everything. Why would he help her? Because family is more complicated than hate. Because he might want revenge on you more than he wants justice. Because this is exactly how people get killed, walking into obvious setups because they're desperate for answers. Elena stood, grabbed her jacket. Then I'm desperate. Because sitting here waiting for Katerina to pick us off one by one isn't working. If there's information, if there's something we missed, I need to know. Elena. I'm going. You can come with me or you can stay here, but I'm done hiding. The diner was exactly what she'd expected. Cracked vinyl booths, coffee that tasted like regret, fluorescent lights that made everyone look half dead. Marcus Webb sat in the back booth. Mid-60s, gray hair, expensive watch that didn't match the setting. He stood when Elena approached. Dorian was 3 booths away, positioned where he could see the exits. Gun concealed but accessible. His presence was a compromise they'd reached in the car. She'd go to the meeting, he'd provide backup, they'd both pretend this wasn't insane. Miss Virelli, thank you for coming. Webb gestured to the seat across from him. His hands were steady, manicured, the hands of someone who'd spent a lifetime making problems disappear through paperwork. You said you had information. Elena sat but didn't relax. Talk. Webb pulled out a folder, thin, innocuous, set it on the table between them. What I'm about to tell you stays confidential. Attorney-client privilege doesn't technically apply since you're not my client, but I'm trusting your discretion because the alternative, Katerina Cade maintaining complete control, serves no one. Understood. 3 days ago, federal investigators were preparing to file charges, real charges, RICO statutes, conspiracy, murder for hire. They had enough from your files to build a prosecutable case. Webb opened the folder. Then the investigation was killed. Not slowed. Not redirected. Killed. Orders came from the Deputy Attorney General's office. All materials were to be sealed, all active warrants suspended. The case was classified as insufficient evidence to proceed. Elena's pulse hammered. Why? Because Katerina Cade has leverage on the Deputy Attorney General. Photographs, financial records, evidence of an affair with a woman who works in organized crime intelligence, evidence that would destroy his career and land him in prison. Webb slid a document across the table. She's been holding this for 6 years, waiting for the right moment to use it. The document was a photocopy of what looked like surveillance photos. A man Elena didn't recognize with a woman in an expensive restaurant. Timestamps, locations, a pattern of meetings that looked personal, not professional. This is how she's survived every investigation, Webb continued. She has insurance on everyone who matters. Judges, prosecutors, politicians. She spent 3 decades collecting leverage the way other people collect art, and now she's using it. Why are you telling me this? Elena looked up. You work for Adrian. Why would you help me take down his mother? Webb's expression was unreadable. Because Adrian Cade, for all his faults, understood boundaries. He was a criminal, but he had limits. Katerina has no limits. And when I watch someone with no limits acquire the kind of power she's consolidating, I remember history. I remember what happens when monsters stop being afraid of consequences. What does Adrian want in exchange for this? Nothing. He doesn't know I'm here. This is my decision. My conscience. Webb stood. Use it carefully. Expose the deputy AG's corruption, and you might create enough chaos to get real investigators involved. Or you might just get yourself killed faster. Either way, you deserve to know why your plan failed. He left, just walked out. Left Elena sitting in a diner booth holding evidence that explained everything and solved nothing. Dorian slid into the seat Webb had vacated. We leaving? He gave me leverage on the Deputy Attorney General. Evidence of an affair. Claims Katerina used it to kill the federal investigation. That's... Dorian stopped, processed. That's actually brilliant. Horrible. But brilliant. She wasn't worried about the files because she knew she could just kill the investigation from inside. So what do we do with this? Elena held up the document. Release it? Hope someone clean picks up the case? Releasing it proves we still have access to damaging information. Makes us even bigger targets. Dorian's jaw worked. But keeping it means the investigation stays dead. Means Katerina wins. Elena's phone buzzed. Text from Marlena. Urgent. Get back here now. We have a problem. They drove fast. Elena's mind was racing through possibilities. Katerina had found the loft. Someone had betrayed them. The guards had turned. Federal agents were waiting to arrest them for obstruction. When they burst through the door, Marlena was standing in the center of the room looking like she'd seen something that broke her understanding of reality. What happened? Dorian demanded. Marlena pointed to her main screen. I've been tracking Katerina's communications. Encrypted channels. Took me days to crack the protocol. I finally got in 20 minutes ago. And I found this. She pulled up a message thread, timestamps going back 3 months, before Elena had even started investigating Adrian. Before any of this had begun. The messages were between Katerina and someone identified only as DV. Elena read the first few exchanges, felt the floor tilt. DV. The Virelli woman is perfect. Naive enough to be useful, angry enough to be motivated. I can work with this. CK. You're certain she'll go after Adrian? We need him discredited completely before the transition. DV. She'll do exactly what we need, I'll make sure of it. CK. And when she's served her purpose? DV. Then she becomes a liability we eliminate, like all the others. The messages continued. Detailed plans, strategic manipulation. A timeline that matched perfectly with every major decision Elena had made over the past 6 months. Meeting Dorian in the cafe. Being recruited into his operation. The information she'd uncovered about Adrian's theft. The approach to Katerina with Vincent's files. All of it. Planned. Orchestrated. Elena's vision tunneled. No. Marlena scrolled to show more. DV is Dorian Vance. The messages are between Katerina Cade and... That's impossible. Elena spun to face Dorian. He was standing very still, expression carefully neutral. Tell her it's impossible. Dorian looked at her, and something in his eyes confirmed what she couldn't accept. It's not impossible, he said quietly. The loft exploded into motion. Marlena stepped back. The guards reached for weapons. Elena felt like her chest had been cracked open and everything inside was spilling out. You're working with her. The words came out broken, disbelieving. This whole time, everything, you were working with Katerina. It's more complicated than that. Complicated. Elena laughed. It was a horrible sound, unhinged. You manipulated me, used me to destroy Adrian, made me think I was... Her voice broke. I trusted you. I know. You son of a bitch. She moved without thinking, crossed the distance between them, shoved him hard enough that he stumbled back. People died. Vincent died. Because of information I gave you. Because I thought we were... Vincent was always going to die. He was a liability. Unstable. The moment he got those files, his clock started. Dorian's voice stayed level, clinical. This was always the plan, Elena. From the moment I approached you. Katerina needed Adrian removed, but couldn't do it herself without looking weak. You were the perfect weapon. Angry, motivated, smart enough to actually pull it off. So you what? Pretended to care? Pretended to want to build something better? I do want to build something better. That part was real. Katerina and I have an agreement. She's stepping back, transitioning power. I'm taking over the infrastructure but modernizing it. No more violence for violence's sake. No more chaos. Just clean, efficient control. Elena stared at him. Really looked. Saw the stranger standing where someone she'd trusted used to be. And where do I fit in this plan? Dorian's expression shifted. Something that might have been regret. You were supposed to disappear after Adrian fell. Take the win. Move on. But you kept pushing, kept digging, made yourself too visible, too dangerous. So you were going to kill me. Katerina was going to kill you. I was trying to find an alternative. How generous. Elena's hands were shaking. She pressed them against her thighs, focused on breathing. The files, the dead man's switch, all of it. You knew because you were working with her. You probably helped her prepare for the exposure, made sure it wouldn't actually stick. The exposure was necessary. Had to look real. Make you think you'd won. Otherwise, you'd never stop. He took a step closer. She backed away. Elena, listen to me. You can still walk away from this. I can convince Katerina you're not a threat. Get you out of the city. Set you up somewhere safe. You just have to... Have to what? Pretend this didn't happen? Forget that you've been lying to me for 6 months? That every conversation, every plan, every moment was manipulation? Yes. Simple. Honest. Brutal. Because the alternative is you die. Tonight. Katerina's people are already mobilizing. The only reason you're alive right now is because I convinced her to let me handle this, to give you an out. Elena looked at Marlena. Did you know? Marlena's face was pale. No, I swear. I just cracked the encryption 20 minutes ago. I had no idea. The team? They work for Dorian, which means... Marlena trailed off. Which means we're surrounded by people loyal to him. The guards at the exits shifted, weapons visible now. Not pointed, but ready. Elena felt the trap close around her. Every exit blocked, every ally compromised. Every decision she'd made over the past 6 months had been guided by a man working with her enemy. Why? The question came out raw. Why go through all this? Why not just kill me back when Adrian divorced me? Why the elaborate setup? Because Katerina needed Adrian destroyed from the inside. Needed it to look like organic collapse. His own greed, his own paranoia, his own failures bringing him down. If she'd just removed him, there would have been questions. Resistance, war. Dorian's voice carried something that might have been respect. You were perfect, his ex-wife, someone with motive, someone smart enough to actually uncover his theft, but not connected enough to be seen as a threat. You did exactly what we needed you to do, and now you're going to kill me because I know too much. I'm trying to save you. There's a difference. No. Elena's voice was steel. There really isn't. She looked around the loft. At Marlena, trapped and terrified. At the guards who'd been allies yesterday and were executioners today. At Dorian, standing there with the kind of calm that came from absolute control. And she understood. There was no negotiating out of this. No clever plan, no last-minute save. She was going to die in this room unless she did something desperate. The panic button was in her jacket pocket, but pressing it would just bring more of Dorian's people. The gun at her ankle, Marlena's backup piece that she'd insisted Elena carry, was an option, but she'd never make it past the guards. Her phone was in her hand, and in her other pocket the document Webb had given her. Evidence of Katerina's leverage on the Deputy Attorney General. Okay, she said quietly. You win. I'll take the deal. I'll disappear. Dorian's shoulders relaxed, just slightly. Smart choice? I'll make the arrangements. You'll be out of the city by morning. I just need to make a call first. Let someone know I'm leaving. Tie up loose ends. No calls. It's my sister. She's in Nevada. Has no connection to any of this. I just need to tell her I'm okay so she doesn't file a missing person report. Elena kept her voice steady, reasonable. You can listen to the whole thing. Make sure I don't say anything I shouldn't. Dorian studied her, calculating. Speakerphone. Short conversation. Anything that sounds like a warning and the deal's off. Elena nodded, pulled up her contacts, scrolled to a number labeled Sarah, sister, pressed dial. The phone rang twice. A woman's voice answered. Hello? Hey Sarah, it's me. I know it's late, but I wanted to let you know I'm taking a trip. Out of town for a while. Might be hard to reach. There was a pause. Then, I understand. Is everything okay? Yeah, just need a change of scenery. Wanted to make sure you knew so you wouldn't worry. Elena's hand moved slowly toward her other pocket, toward the document. Actually, can I text you the details? I'm about to lose signal, and I want to make sure you have all the information. Of course. Be safe, Elena. I will. Love you. She hung up, looked at Dorian. Can I send her the text now, just the address where I'll be staying, so she has it for emergencies? He nodded. Elena pulled out her phone, started typing. But what she was actually doing was photographing the document Webb had given her, the evidence of Katerina's leverage, the corruption that had killed the federal investigation. Her hands were shaking, but the camera was steady. She attached the photo to a message, but instead of sending it to Sarah, she sent it to every major news outlet in her contacts, every federal agency, every investigative journalist she'd compiled over the past 6 months. And then she sent one more message, to an email address Marlena had set up as a dead drop. Insurance they'd created weeks ago for exactly this kind of scenario. The message contained one sentence. Dorian Vance is working with Katerina Cade. They planned everything. I'm being held at the loft. Send this to everyone. She hit send on all of them simultaneously. Looked up at Dorian. Done, she said. His phone buzzed. Then Marlena's. Then every guard's phone in the room. Simultaneous notifications. The sound of Elena's messages hitting their destinations. Dorian pulled out his phone. Read. Went very still. What did you do? I exposed you. Just sent evidence of Katerina's corruption to every outlet that matters. And I told them you've been working with her, that you're the one who orchestrated Adrian's fall, that this entire operation is a front. Elena's voice was steady now, calm. So you can kill me. But in about 30 minutes, every investigator in the city is going to know you're Katerina's partner, and killing me just confirms it. The room erupted. Dorian was shouting orders. The guards were moving. Marlena was backing toward her computers. And Elena was standing in the center of chaos, feeling something close to free. Because she'd just destroyed everything. Burned every bridge. Eliminated every option except the nuclear one. Dorian grabbed her arm. Hard enough to bruise. You just signed your own death warrant. No, I signed yours. Elena met his eyes. You said you wanted to build something better. Let's see how that works when everyone knows you're just another monster wearing a better suit. He released her, pulled out his phone, made a call. It's me. We have a problem. Elena just went scorched earth. Sent evidence to, yes, everything. The AG's corruption, our communications, all of it. He listened. His expression went darker. Understood. I'll handle it. He hung up, looked at Elena, and what she saw in his face wasn't anger, it was fear. Katerina says you have 1 hour to retract everything. Send retractions. Call it a hoax. Claim you fabricated it out of revenge. Do that and she'll consider letting you live. Tell Katerina to go to hell. Elena, I'm done negotiating with monsters. Done being used. Done pretending there's a version of this that doesn't end in blood. She stepped back. You want me to retract? You're going to have to kill me. And when you do, every piece of evidence I just sent becomes authenticated by my murder. So go ahead, pull the trigger. Let's see how that plays out for your new empire. Dorian stared at her. The calculation was visible on his face. Kill her and confirm everything. Let her live and she keeps burning down his operation. There's a third option, Marlena said quietly. Everyone turned. She was at her computer, typing. I can make it look like the messages came from someone else. Fake the metadata. Make it seem like they were fabricated by Katerina's enemies. Plant enough doubt that the evidence gets dismissed as a hoax. Her fingers flew. But I need 30 minutes, and I need Elena's cooperation. Why would I cooperate? Elena asked. Because if you don't, Dorian kills you and I die next for knowing too much. If you do, we both maybe survive long enough to find an actual way out. Marlena's eyes met hers. I know you don't trust anyone right now. I wouldn't either, but I'm not working with them. I'm just trying not to die in the next hour. The logic was sound, cold, exactly the kind of calculus this world ran on. Elena looked at Dorian. If I do this, if I help discredit my own evidence, what's stopping Katerina from killing us both the second it's done? Nothing, but at least you'll be alive long enough to try something else. He holstered his weapon. Clock's ticking. Decide. 29 minutes left. Elena's mind raced. The messages were already out there, being read, verified, investigated. Trying to retract them would just look like coercion, but not trying meant dying right now. Unless. I'll do it, she said. On one condition. You're not in a position to negotiate conditions. I am if you want this done right. If I just send retractions, it looks forced. But if I give an interview, live interview with a major outlet, and explain that I fabricated the evidence out of revenge against Katerina for threatening me, that could work. Puts a face to the retraction, makes it more believable. Dorian's eyes narrowed. What outlet? Doesn't matter. You're a people pick. Set it up. I'll do the interview, sell the lie, and then maybe Katerina lets us breathe long enough to actually disappear. It was a terrible plan. Transparent. Dorian had to see the trap, but he was desperate enough to consider it. 15 minutes, he said finally. I'll set it up. You try anything at all, and Marlena dies first so you can watch. Understood? Understood. He made calls, rapid fire, pulled strings. By minute 23, they had a live interview set up with a local news outlet. Remote connection, camera positioned in the loft, Elena sitting in frame, looking exhausted and desperate and believable. The reporter appeared on screen, young, ambitious, the kind of journalist who'd sell their integrity for a scoop. Miss Varelli, thank you for speaking with us. There are reports that you've been spreading false information about Katerina Cade. Can you explain? Elena looked directly into the camera, at the thousands of people watching, at the investigators and journalists and federal agents who were listening, and she smiled. Yes, I can explain. Everything I sent tonight is absolutely true. Katerina Cade used leverage to kill a federal investigation. Dorian Vance has been working with her for months. They manipulated me into destroying Adrian Cade so they could consolidate power. And right now, I'm being held at gunpoint in a loft in the industrial district, being forced to recant under threat of death. The reporter's face went blank. What? The address is 447 Industrial Way. There are armed guards. I have approximately 6 minutes before they kill me and everyone in this room. If you're a federal agent watching this, if you're anyone who gives a damn about justice, you need to get here now. Chaos erupted. Dorian was shouting. The guards were moving. Marlena was diving for cover, and Elena was still looking at the camera. Katerina Cade and Dorian Vance are working together. They've been planning this for months. Everything I exposed about her is true, and if I die tonight, that proves it. So come get me, or come investigate my body. Either way, the truth is out there now. The feed cut. Dorian's people had killed the connection, but it was too late. The broadcast had gone out, live, unedited, irrevocable. Dorian grabbed Elena, slammed her against the wall hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. You just killed yourself. Maybe, but I took you down with me. She could taste blood, her own. How's it feel, being exposed? Losing control? His fist connected with her ribs. Pain exploded. She dropped. Couldn't breathe. Get her out of here, Dorian said to the guards. Back entrance. We move before federal response arrives. Kill her somewhere quiet and dump the body where it'll take weeks to find. The guards hauled her up. Elena's vision was swimming, ribs screaming, but through the pain she could hear sirens. Distant, but getting closer. The interview had worked. Someone was responding. The guards dragged her toward the back exit. Marlena was shouting something. Dorian was on his phone trying to coordinate an escape, and Elena was being pulled toward execution, thinking that at least she'd made it loud. At least when they found her body, the truth would be undeniable. The back exit opened onto an alley, dark, perfect for murder. The guards had their weapons out, safeties off. Elena closed her eyes, heard the sirens get louder, felt the cold of the alley air, waited for the shot that would end this. Instead, she heard tires, vehicles, multiple, screeching to a stop. Voices. Federal agents! Drop your weapons! Hands where we can see them! The guards froze. Elena opened her eyes. The alley was flooded with light, armored vehicles, tactical teams, at least 20 agents in body armor with rifles trained on the loft exits. Someone had responded, fast, probably had teams already mobilized from the earlier evidence drops. The interview had just given them a location. The guards dropped their weapons, hands up, faces showing the calculation of people who knew when they were outmatched. An agent approached Elena. "Miss Varelli, are you injured?" "Broken ribs, maybe. Definitely bruised." Her voice came out ragged. "Dorian Vance is inside. He's armed, working with Katerina Cade. You need to—" "We know. We've been building a case since your first evidence drop. The interview gave us probable cause for immediate action." The agent helped her toward a vehicle. "You're safe now. We've got this." Elena looked back at the loft, saw agents streaming in, heard shouting, the controlled chaos of a tactical operation. She'd survived, barely. But the cost was becoming clear. She'd exposed Dorian, confirmed Katerina's corruption, set in motion a chain of events that would tear apart the entire criminal infrastructure of the city. And she'd done it knowing there was no going back. The agent was talking. Something about medical attention and protective custody and testimony. Elena nodded along but couldn't focus because she could see Dorian being led out in handcuffs. He found her in the crowd. Their eyes met, and what she saw there wasn't hatred. It was something worse. Recognition. The understanding that they'd both been using each other, that every manipulation had been mutual, that the only difference between them was that she'd been willing to burn everything, including herself, to win. He smiled, just slightly, and mouthed two words. "Worth it?" Elena didn't answer, because she didn't know. The hospital was sterile and bright and safe in a way that felt alien. Elena sat in a bed with bandaged ribs and an IV in her arm while federal agents took her statement for the third time. Yes, she'd been working with Dorian Vance. No, she hadn't known he was compromised. Yes, she had evidence that proved Katerina Cade had corrupted the investigation. Yes, she would testify. The questions continued, hours of them, until her voice was raw and her head pounded and she just wanted everyone to leave. When they finally did, she was alone. The TV mounted on the wall was showing news coverage. Her interview had gone viral. The exposure of Dorian and Katerina was everywhere. Federal agents had raided 3 more properties, arrested 7 people connected to the organization. But Katerina herself remained free. Her lawyers were already spinning the story, claiming she was a victim of Dorian's manipulation, that she'd been trying to reform the organization from within, that any evidence suggesting otherwise was fabricated by enemies. It was brilliant, infuriating, exactly what Elena should have expected. A knock on the door. She looked up expecting another agent. It was Adrian. He looked different. Thinner, harder. Like the past 6 months had carved away everything soft until only edges remained. "You shouldn't be here," Elena said. "Probably not, but I needed to see you." He stayed in the doorway, hands visible, non-threatening. "I heard what happened, what Dorian did, what my mother did. If you're here to gloat, I'm here to apologize." The words stopped her. For everything. The marriage, the divorce, being too much of a coward to be honest with you. You deserve better than what I gave you. Elena stared at him. "Why now? Why show up after 6 months?" "Because you almost died fighting the same monster I spent my entire life being afraid of. Because you did what I never could, stood up to her, actually made her vulnerable." He stepped into the room. "And because Webb told me he gave you the leverage on the deputy AG, I wanted you to know that came from me. My decision. My attempt to help even though I had no right to ask for anything from you. You want forgiveness?" "No. I want you to understand that what I did to you, discarding you like that, it wasn't because you didn't matter. It was because you mattered too much. And I was too broken to handle it." The honesty was unexpected. Elena didn't trust it, couldn't afford to. "Your mother's still out there," she said. "Still free, still dangerous. Your apology doesn't change that." "I know, but I have something that might." Adrian pulled out a phone. "Security footage from her estate, the night Vincent died. Shows her giving direct orders for the hit. Explicit. Undeniable. The kind of evidence that even her lawyers can't spin." He set the phone on the bed. "Why are you giving this to me?" Because she destroyed both of us, used us, manipulated us into destroying each other while she consolidated power. And I'm tired of being her weapon. He backed toward the door. Do what you want with it, but know that if you use it, she'll come after you harder than before. This is the kind of evidence that either destroys her completely or gets you killed. That's not much of a choice. It's the only one we have. He paused at the door. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. You deserved a better story than the one I gave you. Then he left. Elena picked up the phone, watched the footage, saw Katerina sitting in her study giving orders in that calm, measured voice, saw her specify Vincent's location, the method, the timing, saw proof that would put her away forever, if Elena used it, if she survived long enough to see it through. The phone felt heavy, like it was made of something denser than metal and glass, like it was made of all the choices that had led here and all the choices still waiting. She looked at the ceiling, tried to find answers in the acoustic tiles, found nothing but exhaustion and the slow understanding that she'd crossed so many lines there was no going back to who she used to be. The woman Adrian had married was dead. The woman who'd investigated his empire was gone. What remained was something harder, sharper, capable of terrible things justified by impossible circumstances. Elena closed her eyes, made a decision she'd regret forever, and pressed play on the phone, watched the footage 3 more times, then sent it to every federal agency she could think of. Outside her hospital room, the world continued, indifferent, relentless. Inside, Elena Virelli became the woman who'd declared war on a dynasty and refused to stop until it was ashes. Even if she burned with it, the footage hit the federal database at 3:17 a.m. By 4, 3 different agencies had verified its authenticity. By 5:30, arrest warrants were being drafted. By 6 o'clock, Katerina Cade knew everything. Elena was still in the hospital bed when her phone rang. Not the burner. Not a number she recognized. Her actual phone. The one only a handful of people had access to. She answered without thinking. Hello? You've made a terrible mistake. Katerina's voice was ice. Controlled fury wrapped in perfect diction. I gave you opportunities. Multiple opportunities. To walk away. To survive. To choose literally any path except the one that leads to your death. Elena's ribs screamed as she sat up. If you're calling to threaten me, I'm calling to inform you that you have 6 hours. 6 hours before I demonstrate exactly what happens to people who forget their place in this world. The line crackled. Background noise. Movement. Katerina was already in motion. You sent evidence to federal agents. Fine, they'll process it. File charges. And while they're building their case, I'll be erasing every person who helped you, starting with the ones you care about. I don't care about anyone. The lie tasted like copper. Liar. You care about Marlena. She's very good at what she does. Talented, young, probably has a future if she lives through the next 6 hours. Katerina's voice dropped. You care about Adrian. Despite everything, despite the divorce and the humiliation, there's still something there. Pity, maybe. Recognition. Doesn't matter. He gave you that footage. I know he did, and he'll pay for that betrayal. Elena's pulse hammered. You're his mother. I'm a woman who built an empire. Motherhood is just biology. Adrian stopped being my son the moment he became a liability. A pause. And you, Elena Virelli, the woman who was nothing, who should have stayed nothing. You've become my favorite kind of problem, the kind I enjoy solving personally. Then come solve it. Stop hiding behind phone calls and hit squads. You want me dead? Come do it yourself. The challenge hung there. Dangerous, stupid, exactly the kind of thing that got people killed. Katerina laughed, soft, amused. I'm going to enjoy watching you break. Not your body, that's easy. But your mind, your certainty, that righteous fury that's kept you alive this long. I'm going to take it apart piece by piece until you understand exactly how small you really are. The line went dead. Elena's hands were shaking. She dropped the phone, tried to breathe around the panic constricting her chest. The door burst open. Federal agents, 3 of them. The lead, a woman named Chen, who'd taken Elena's statement earlier, looked grim. We need to move you, now. Katerina Cade just liquidated 6 offshore accounts. That's operational funding. She's mobilizing. Mobilizing for what? For war. Chen was already pulling Elena from the bed, disconnecting the IV, moving with the kind of efficiency that suggested this wasn't theoretical. We've intercepted communications. She's calling in every favor, every asset, every person who owes her. This is scorched earth, and you're the target. They moved fast. Elena was still in a hospital gown and bare feet when they hustled her into an armored vehicle. The hospital was in lockdown, staff being evacuated, patients being moved to secure floors, the machinery of federal protection kicking into overdrive. But Elena knew, felt it in her bones, that it wouldn't be enough. Katerina had survived 4 decades in a world designed to kill people like her, had resources the federal government couldn't imagine, had the kind of will that turned obstacles into opportunities. And now she was coming. The safe house was a converted warehouse in the industrial district, reinforced walls, multiple exits, a tactical team of 12 agents in full gear. Chen walked Elena through the protocols. Emergency exits, panic buttons, the chain of command if things went wrong. We've handled worse, Chen said, but her eyes told a different story. This wasn't worse. This was unprecedented. Elena sat in a room with bulletproof windows and tried to make sense of the past 12 hours. Dorian arrested, Katerina exposed, Adrian providing evidence against his own mother, the entire criminal infrastructure of the city collapsing in real time, and her, broken ribs, exhausted, terrified, at the center of it all. Her phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. Marlena here. They got me out. I'm safe. Don't trust anyone. D had people everywhere. Relief flooded through her. Marlena was alive. Safe. That was something. Another text. Different number. Adrian. Mother knows I helped you. I'm going dark. Watch your back. She won't stop until you're dead or she is. Choose carefully which one happens. A. Then a third message. This one made her blood freeze. Tick-tock, Elena. 5 hours now. Make them count. C.K. Chen appeared in the doorway. We've got movement. Multiple vehicles. 3 blocks out and closing. This is it. The agents moved into position. Weapons ready. Tactical deployment around every entrance. Elena was pushed into an interior room. No windows. Steel door. The kind of space designed to be a last stand. She could hear them outside. Coordinating. Calling for backup. The controlled tension of professionals preparing for violence. Then gunfire. Not the clean sounds from movies. Real gunfire. Sharp cracks that hurt her ears even through the walls. Shouting. More shots. The thud of something heavy hitting the ground. Chen burst in. We're compromised. They've got explosives. Breaching the west wall. We need to move you now. Elena followed. They ran through corridors that smelled like concrete and fear. Behind them, the building shuddered. An explosion. Close, loud enough to make her ears ring. They reached the emergency exit. Chen pushed it open. Stopped. The alley outside was full of bodies. Federal agents, Katerina's people. Impossible to tell who'd won because everyone was dead. Back, Chen hissed. Pulled Elena away from the door. Backup exit. Go, go, go. But the backup exit was blocked. Men in tactical gear. Not federal. Mercenaries. Professional. The kind of people who got hired when murder needed to look military. Chen raised her weapon. Federal agents, stand down. They opened fire. Chen went down. 2 shots center mass, dead before she hit the ground. Elena ran. Pure instinct. Survival overriding thought. She crashed through a door into what looked like an old office space. Desks, filing cabinets, windows that showed the street 3 stories below. Behind her, footsteps. Organized, methodical. Not rushing because they didn't need to. They had time. She grabbed a fire extinguisher, useless as a weapon but heavy enough to matter, pressed herself against the wall beside the door. When the first mercenary entered, she swung. Connected with his head, he dropped. She grabbed his rifle but didn't know how to use it, fumbled with the safety. Wasted seconds. The second mercenary didn't make the same mistake, kicked the rifle from her hands, grabbed her throat, slammed her against the wall hard enough to crack plaster. Elena couldn't breathe, vision tunneling. She clawed at his hands, found his eyes, pressed her thumbs in hard. He screamed, released her. She dropped, gasped for air, grabbed the fire extinguisher again, and swung at his knee. It shattered. Audible crunch. He went down. Elena ran again, through another door, downstairs. Her ribs were screaming. Every breath was broken glass. But stopping meant dying. She burst onto the ground floor, the main warehouse space. Bodies everywhere. Federal agents. Katerina's people. The tactical team had put up a fight, but they'd been overwhelmed. And standing in the center of the carnage, calm as someone at a gallery opening, was Katerina Cade. She was dressed in black. Tailored, expensive. Not a hair out of place despite the war zone around her. 2 bodyguards flanked her, professional, alert. Weapons drawn but pointed at the ground. There you are. Katerina's voice carried across the space. I was worried you'd died in the explosion. That would have been disappointing. Too quick. Elena's lungs burned. She couldn't run anymore, couldn't fight, could barely stand. What do you want? The words came out ragged. I want you to understand what you've cost me, what this little crusade of yours has destroyed. Katerina walked closer, stepping over bodies like they were debris. Dorian arrested, my organization in chaos, federal investigations that will take years to untangle, all because you couldn't accept being discarded like the nothing you are. I'm not nothing. No. You're something worse. You're a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when I show mercy, when I let someone live because they seem harmless. Katerina stopped 10 feet away. I should have killed you the night Adrian divorced you, put you down quiet, clean. Instead, I got curious, wanted to see what you'd do, if you'd disappear or if there was something harder underneath. And now you know. Now I know you're dangerous, unpredictable, the kind of threat that has to be eliminated completely, not just killed, erased. Everyone you've touched, every connection you've made, all of it burned down so thoroughly that in 6 months no one will remember you existed. Elena's hand moved to her pocket. The panic button was gone, lost somewhere in the chaos. But her fingers found something else, the shard of glass from the explosion. Small, sharp, barely a weapon. Better than nothing. You can't erase me, Elena said, buying time, trying to think. The evidence is already out there. The footage of you ordering Vincent's murder, the corruption, everything. Killing me just confirms it all. Perhaps. But I've survived worse scandals. I'll survive this one. Katerina gestured to her bodyguards. Take her outside. Somewhere the federal response teams will find her eventually. I want the death-ruled self-defense. A desperate woman attacking law enforcement during a rescue operation. Tragic. Inevitable. The bodyguards moved forward. Elena gripped the glass. Felt it cut into her palm. Didn't care. When the first bodyguard reached for her, she moved. Slashed at his face. Drew blood. He stumbled back. The second one didn't hesitate. Struck her ribs. The pain was nuclear. White hot. She collapsed. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Strong hands grabbed her. Dragged her toward the exit. She tried to fight. Couldn't. Her body had given up even if her mind hadn't. Then gunfire. Different from before. Precise. Controlled. The bodyguard holding her dropped. Dead weight. The second one spun. Raised his weapon. Another shot. He went down. Elena hit the ground. Rolled. Looked up. Adrian stood in the doorway. Rifle raised. Expression empty. He'd taken the shot from 30 yards in a room full of smoke and chaos and hit exactly what he'd aimed at. Katerina turned slowly. Adrian, I was wondering when you'd arrive. Let her go. His voice was flat, final. This ends now. Does it? You're going to shoot your own mother? I'm going to stop you. There's a difference. Katerina smiled. You've never stopped me. Never even tried. You spent your entire life being what I made you, a weak, sentimental failure who couldn't even stay married for 4 hours. She took a step toward him. You think holding a gun changes that? It changes enough. Then shoot. Pull that trigger. Prove you're capable of making the hard choices. Another step. Or admit that you're still the scared little boy who needs his mother's approval to breathe. Adrian's finger tensed on the trigger. Elena could see it from where she lay bleeding on the concrete, could see the war happening behind his eyes. And she understood. He couldn't do it. Couldn't pull the trigger on the woman who'd raised him, shaped him, destroyed him. Katerina knew it too. That's what I thought. She pulled a pistol from inside her jacket, aimed at Elena. I'll do what you can't. Make the hard choice. Remove the threat. The world slowed. Elena saw the gun, saw Katerina's finger tighten, saw the end arriving in slow motion. Then Adrian fired. The shot caught Katerina in the shoulder, spun her. The pistol clattered to the ground. She grabbed her arm, blood seeping between her fingers. "You shot me!" Disbelief. Genuine shock. "You actually shot me! I told you, this ends now!" Adrian's rifle was still raised, steady. Federal agents are 3 minutes out. Medical response right behind them. You can surrender or you can bleed out. Choose. Katerina laughed, wet, pained. "You think this is over? That shooting me changes anything?" She pressed harder on her shoulder. "I've survived worse. And when I recover, when I rebuild, I'm going to make you watch while I destroy everything you've ever cared about." "You already did that." Adrian lowered the rifle. "The woman I married, the life I could have had. You destroyed it all because you were afraid I might be happy, might be human, might choose something besides this." He gestured to the bodies, the blood, the ruins of the empire. "So no, you don't get to threaten me anymore. You don't get to use fear and manipulation to control me. You're done." Sirens filled the air, multiple vehicles, the federal response finally arriving. Katerina looked at Elena, then at Adrian, and something in her expression shifted. Not surrender, recognition. You love her. Not a question, a realization. After everything, after the divorce and the destruction and the betrayal, you still love her. Adrian didn't answer. "That's your weakness," Katerina said. "That's what I'll use to destroy you both." Then she collapsed. Blood loss, shock, genuine medical emergency. Adrian moved to her, applied pressure to the wound, not out of love, out of the kind of automatic response that came from years of being her son. Elena dragged herself upright, ribs protesting, vision swimming. She stumbled to where Katerina lay. "Why?" The question came out broken. "Why couldn't you just let me disappear? I took your money, signed the papers. I was gone." Katerina's eyes focused on her. "Because you made my son human again. Even for 4 hours. You reminded him there was a world outside this empire, and I couldn't allow that. Couldn't let him believe he had choices. So you destroyed us both. I tried, but you refused to stay destroyed. That's admirable. Infuriating, but admirable." She coughed, blood on her lips. "If I die here, know this. Everything you've survived, everything you've learned, it's made you exactly like me. Ruthless, willing to burn the world to survive. You think you're different. You're not. You're just younger." The words hit like bullets, because part of Elena knew they were true. Federal agents swarmed the building, paramedics, tactical teams. The organized chaos of a crime scene being secured. Someone was talking to Elena, asking questions, checking her injuries. She answered on autopilot. Yes, she'd been held hostage. Yes, she'd witnessed Katerina Cade orchestrating the attack. Yes, she could testify. Adrian was being detained, not arrested. Yet, but federal agents were asking him why he'd been armed, how he'd known where to find them, what his relationship was to the ongoing investigation. He met Elena's eyes across the warehouse, nodded once. A goodbye, an acknowledgement, an apology. Then they led him away. Elena was put in an ambulance, rushed to a hospital, real one this time, with actual security and federal marshals and the kind of protection that suggested they'd finally understood how dangerous this had become. Surgery for her ribs. 2 cracked, 1 broken. Internal bleeding that could have killed her if she'd waited another hour. The doctor spoke in careful terms about trauma and recovery and how lucky she was to be alive. Lucky. The word felt obscene. She woke up in a private room, federal agents outside, IV in her arm, pain medication that made everything fuzzy but didn't quite erase the images, Katerina's eyes, Adrian's rifle. Bodies piled in a warehouse like cordwood. A knock on the door. She tensed, relaxed when she saw who it was, Marlena, alive, whole, looking exhausted and terrified and angry. "You look like hell," Marlena said. "You should see the other guys." Elena's voice was rough. "Literally, they're dead." Marlena sat in the chair beside the bed. Federal agents raided Dorian's operation, found files, communications, evidence that he'd been compromised for months. They're building a RICO case. He's looking at 40 years minimum. Good. Katerina's in custody. Critical condition, but stable. They're moving her to a federal facility as soon as she's medically cleared. Her lawyers are already filing motions, but the evidence is overwhelming. She's done. Is she, though? Elena looked at the ceiling. She survived 40 years. You think prison stops her? I think she's 70 years old with a gunshot wound and the entire federal government committed to putting her away forever. That's as close to stopped as people like her get. Marlena pulled out a tablet, showed Elena news coverage. The Cade Empire was imploding in real time. Arrests, seizures, people turning on each other as the organization collapsed. The kind of systematic destruction that happened when fear was the only thing holding something together and the fear suddenly evaporated. You did this, Marlena said quietly. You destroyed an empire that survived for 4 decades. You exposed corruption at the highest levels. You made people care about justice in a city that had forgotten what that word meant. People died. People were always dying. You just made it mean something. The words should have been comforting. They weren't. Elena closed her eyes. What happens now? Now you heal, testify when they need you, and figure out who you are when you're not fighting for survival. That last part felt impossible. Elena had been fighting so long she didn't remember what normal felt like. Didn't know if she could go back to being a person instead of a weapon. Adrian saved my life, she said. I know, federal agents reviewed the security footage. He'll probably face charges for the illegal firearm. Maybe for his role in the organization. But the shooting was ruled justified, self-defense, defense of others. He might walk. And then what? Marlena shrugged. That's between you two. But Elena, he's not the man you married, and you're not the woman he divorced. Whatever happens next, it's not about fixing the past. It's about figuring out if there's a future worth building. She left. Elena alone with her thoughts and the pain medication and the slow understanding that surviving wasn't the same as winning. 3 days later, federal prosecutors offered her a deal. Full immunity in exchange for testimony against Katerina Cade, against Dorian Vance, against everyone connected to the organization. She signed without reading the fine print. The trial preparation took weeks. Depositions, evidence review, mock questioning where prosecutors threw every horrible detail at her to prepare for what defense attorneys would do. Elena sat through it all with the kind of detachment that came from being hollowed out. She answered questions, provided documentation, helped build the case that would put Katerina away forever, and tried not to think about the fact that Katerina had been right, that Elena had become exactly what she'd hated, ruthless, willing to destroy everything to survive, carrying bodies in her wake and calling it justice. The night before the trial was supposed to start, Elena got a visitor. Adrian. He looked different, thinner, like prison food and stress had carved away everything unnecessary. But his eyes were clearer than she'd ever seen them. They're letting you testify? She asked. Immunity deal, same as you. I give them everything about the organization and I walk. He sat in the chair across from her hospital bed. They'd kept her for observation, something about complications and monitoring. Really, it was protective custody with better food. Are you going to? Yeah, I'm done protecting her. Done pretending family loyalty means anything when the family is diseased. He met her eyes. I wanted to see you before it all becomes official. Before we're just witnesses in a trial. Why? Because I owe you an explanation, a real one. Not the bullshit I gave you at the penthouse. Elena's ribs ached. She shifted. I'm listening. Adrian took a breath. When I married you, I was trying to prove something. To myself. To her. That I could be normal. That I could have one thing in my life that wasn't contaminated by this empire. And for 4 hours it worked. I looked at you in that dress, and I thought maybe I could actually do it. Be a person instead of a weapon. Then why divorce me? Because my mother called. At 3 a.m., right after the wedding, and she said one sentence, does she know what you really are? His voice cracked. And I realized the answer was no. You didn't know. You married someone you thought was a businessman. Maybe a little dangerous, but basically legitimate. You had no idea what I'd done, who I'd killed, the things I'd ordered just to maintain power. So you threw me away to protect me. I threw you away because I was a coward. Because the idea of you finding out what I really was, of seeing the disgust in your eyes, was worse than just ending it. So I told myself it was mercy, that cutting you loose was noble, when really it was just me being too broken to be honest. The confession sat between them, raw, true. And now? Elena asked. Now I'm trying to figure out how to be a person who's not defined by fear, who doesn't make every decision based on what his mother might think, who can actually look at the woman he loved and admit he destroyed something real because he was too damaged to protect it. Loved. Present tense. Elena's chest tightened. Adrian, I'm not asking for anything. I'm not here to beg for a second chance or pretend we can go back. I just wanted you to know that what we had, even for 4 hours, it was real. The most real thing in my entire life. And I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to fight for it. He stood, walked to the door, stopped. For what it's worth, watching you destroy my mother's empire was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You did what I spent my entire life being too afraid to try. You made her face consequences, and I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful for that. Then he left. Elena sat in the empty room and felt something crack inside her chest. Not breaking, shifting, like a foundation that had been poured wrong finally settling into a shape that could support weight. She'd spent 6 months being angry at Adrian, hating him, using that hate as fuel to burn down everything he'd come from. But underneath the hate had been something else, something she hadn't wanted to acknowledge because acknowledging it meant admitting she was human, vulnerable, capable of caring about someone who'd hurt her. She'd loved him, maybe still did, in the broken, complicated way that people loved each other when the damage was too deep to heal completely, but too significant to ignore. And he'd loved her. Enough to save her life. Enough to betray his mother. Enough to admit he'd been wrong in the one way that actually mattered. It didn't fix anything. Didn't erase the divorce or the pain or the months of destruction. But it was honest. Finally, completely. The trial started the next morning. Elena sat in the witness box and told her story. From the marriage to the divorce to the investigation to the moment Katerina had stood over her ready to kill. The defense attorneys tried to break her, suggested she was motivated by revenge, by greed, by a desperate need for attention. They pulled up her background, her work history, every mistake she'd ever made. She answered every question with the kind of calm that came from having nothing left to lose. Did you fabricate evidence? No. Did you manipulate Adrian Cade into betraying his mother? No, I exposed his mother's corruption. He chose what to do with that information. Did you enjoy destroying the Cade organization? Elena paused, looked at the jury. I enjoyed surviving. The destruction was just what it cost. The prosecution presented evidence, financial records, the footage of Katerina ordering Vincent's murder, testimony from Adrian, from Marlena, from federal agents who'd witnessed the warehouse attack. It was overwhelming, undeniable. The defense fought anyway, because that's what defense attorneys did. They filed motions and objections and tried to poke holes in a narrative that was built on bedrock. And through it all, Katerina sat at the defense table, calm, composed, watching Elena with the kind of focus that suggested she was memorizing every detail for later use. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty. On all counts, Katerina showed no reaction, just stood when the judge read the sentence. Life. No possibility of parole. To be served in a maximum security federal facility. The courtroom erupted. Media, spectators. The sound of an empire finally, definitively ending. Elena sat in the gallery and felt nothing. Not triumph, not relief, just exhaustion. The kind that came from carrying weight for so long that even when you set it down, your body didn't remember how to stand upright. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Microphones, cameras, questions shouted over each other in an incomprehensible wall of noise. Elena pushed through, federal marshals clearing a path. She had nothing to say to the media, nothing to say to anyone. She just wanted to disappear. But disappearing wasn't an option anymore. Because 3 blocks from the courthouse, a car pulled up beside her. Black. Expensive. Window rolling down. Dorian sat in the back seat, handcuffed, federal agents flanking him, but smiling. Elena, congratulations. You won. She stopped. What do you want? But to remind you that winning and surviving are different things. You got Katerina locked up, got me facing decades in prison, destroyed an entire criminal infrastructure. Impressive. His smile widened. But you didn't destroy the demand, didn't eliminate the need, didn't change the fundamental economics that made the empire possible in the first place. Get to the point, Chukat. The point is, someone's going to fill the vacuum. Someone always does. And when they do, they're going to look at what happened to Katerina and learn. They're going to be smarter, more careful, harder to expose. He leaned closer to the window. And they're going to remember that Elena Varelli is the woman who brought down a dynasty, which makes you either an asset or a threat. And threats don't survive long in this world. The car drove away. Elena stood on the sidewalk, feeling the weight of what he'd said settle over her like concrete. She'd won. Destroyed Katerina. Exposed the corruption. Survived. But survival wasn't an ending. It was just a new beginning. One where she'd have to live with the consequences of everything she'd done. Every choice, every body, every line she'd crossed. And somewhere in the city, in the vacuum left by Katerina's fall, something new was already growing. Something that would be watching. Waiting. Deciding whether Elena Varelli was worth recruiting or eliminating. She pulled out her phone, looked at her contacts, saw Adrian's number, the one he'd given her before the trial started, just in case. Typed a message. We need to talk about what happens next. Sent it. And stood on a street corner in a city that had chewed her up and spit her out and reshaped her into something harder than she'd ever wanted to be. Waiting for a response. Waiting for the next move. Waiting for whatever came after the war she'd just won. Because Elena Varelli had learned the hard way that endings were just pauses before the next beginning. And this beginning felt dangerous. The phone buzzed. Adrian's response. Meet me. Pier 17. 1 hour. Come alone. The same pier where Vincent had died. Where his car had gone into dark water. Where everything had started escalating beyond control. Elena looked at the message. At the choice it represented. Walking into potential danger. Trusting a man who'd already broken her trust once. Choosing connection over safety. Every instinct screamed not to go. Every lesson she'd learned said this was a trap. But underneath the fear was something else. Something that had been growing since the moment Adrian had shot his own mother to save Elena's life. Hope. Fragile. Dangerous. Possibly fatal. But real. She typed back, I'll be there, and started walking toward the pier, toward whatever conversation or confrontation or future was waiting, toward the next chapter of a story that had started with divorce papers at 4 a.m. and had somehow become this. The city moved around her, indifferent, eternal, full of people living their lives without any idea that the woman walking past them had just helped destroy a criminal empire and was now walking toward a meeting that could be her salvation or her execution. Elena didn't know which, didn't care. She was done hiding, done running, done being afraid of what came next. Whatever happened at Pier 17, she'd face it the same way she'd faced everything else. Head on, unflinching, and absolutely irrevocably free. The pier came into view. Empty. Dark. Water lapping at wooden posts that had stood here for decades watching the city change. A figure stood at the end, silhouetted against the water, waiting. Elena walked toward it, each step feeling like a choice, like a commitment, like the beginning of something she couldn't predict but refused to fear. She reached the end of the pier. Adrian turned, and in his eyes she saw the same thing she felt. Not love, not yet, but possibility. The kind that came from two broken people who'd survived the same war and were trying to figure out if there was life after the battlefield. You came, he said. You asked. I wasn't sure you would, after everything. Neither was I. Elena looked out at the water, at the city lights reflecting on dark surface. But I'm tired of making decisions based on fear. So here I am. Tell me why we're here. Adrian took a breath. Because I have a choice to make. And I wanted you to be part of it. Or at least understand it. What choice? Federal immunity means I walk. Clean slate, no charges, no prison. Just Freedom to disappear. Start over somewhere else. He met her eyes. But the organization doesn't just vanish. Someone's going to take control, fill the vacuum. And it's either going to be someone like Dorian, someone who sees people as tools, or it's going to be someone who actually tries to change it. The implication hung there. You want to take over, Elena said. I want to rebuild it. Different. No human trafficking, no drugs, no violence unless absolutely necessary. Just legitimate businesses that were always buried under the criminal enterprise. Construction, logistics, real estate. Things that can actually help the community instead of destroying it. That's naive. Maybe. But what's the alternative? Walk away and let someone worse take control? Let the next Katerina emerge? Or try to be what she never was? Someone who uses power to build instead of destroy. Elena studied him, saw the hope and the fear and the desperate need to believe he could be better than what he'd been raised to be. And me? She asked. Where do I fit in this plan? Anywhere you want. Partner, advisor, someone who keeps me honest. Or nowhere. You walk away. Disappear. Live your life. I'd understand. His voice dropped. But I'd rather do this with you than without you. Because you're the only person who's ever made me believe I could be something besides my mother's weapon. The offer was tempting, dangerous, everything she'd sworn to avoid, but it was also honest, real, the kind of second chance most people never got. I need time, Elena said, to think, to heal, to figure out who I am when I'm not fighting. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, building something, trying to prove we can be more than what we survived. He reached out, touched her hand, light, careful. She didn't pull away. They stood at the end of Pier 17, two people shaped by violence and betrayal and impossible choices, trying to figure out if there was a future that didn't require either of them to be what they'd become. The water moved, the city breathed, and Elena felt something shift inside her chest. Not healing, not yet, but the beginning of it. The understanding that maybe, just maybe, surviving the war was the first step toward learning how to live again. Okay, she said finally. I'll think about it. But Adrian, if I do this, if I help you rebuild, it's not because I've forgiven you or because I think we can go back to what we were. Then why? Because I'm tired of destroying, and maybe it's time to see if I'm capable of building something instead. He smiled, genuine, warm, the first real smile she'd seen from him since the wedding. That's all I'm asking. They walked back down the pier together. Not touching, not talking, just two people who'd been through hell and were trying to figure out what came after. Behind them, the water continued its eternal movement. The city glittered, and somewhere in the vacuum left by Katerina's fall, the future was waiting to be shaped. By them. Or by someone worse. Time would tell which. Part 5. 3 months after the trial, Elena stood in front of a building she'd never expected to own. The structure was old brick, 5 stories, located in a neighborhood that was trying to remember what prosperity looked like after decades of being forgotten. The ground floor had been a restaurant once, then a laundromat, then nothing for years, just empty space collecting dust and broken promises. Now it was hers. Adrian had helped with the acquisition, used connections that were legitimate, or legitimate enough that federal oversight couldn't find fault. The building came with zoning approval for mixed use, commercial below, residential above, the kind of property that could house a business and a life simultaneously. Elena stood on the sidewalk with keys in her hand and no idea what came next. Marlena appeared beside her. She'd been doing that lately, showing up without warning, offering support Elena hadn't asked for but desperately needed. You going to open it or just stare? Marlena asked. Deciding if I'm ready. For what? A building? A business? A future that doesn't involve testifying or running? All of it. Elena unlocked the door. The interior smelled like old wood and possibility. Exposed brick walls, high ceilings, windows that let in light that felt clean somehow, untainted. They walked through the space, Elena's footsteps echoing, Marlena taking photos on her phone, documenting, planning, being practical in the way that kept both of them sane. What are you thinking? Marlena asked. Coffee shop? Restaurant? Bookstore? Community center. The words came out before Elena had fully formed the thought. Place where people can get help, legal advice, job placement, resources for getting out of situations where they feel trapped. Marlena stopped, looked at her. That's specific. That's necessary? Elena ran her hand along the brick. This city eats people, especially people who don't have power or money or connections. I want to build something that gives them options, real options, not just survival, but a way forward. That's going to be expensive and complicated. You'll need staff, lawyers, social workers, funding. I know. And it'll make you visible. People will know where to find you, including people who might not have forgiven you for destroying Katerina's empire. I know that too. Marlena smiled, small, genuine. Then let's build it. But we're installing serious security, and I'm running background checks on everyone who walks through that door. They spent the next 2 months transforming the building. Contractors, permits, the bureaucratic nightmare of trying to create something legitimate in a city that was used to corruption. Elena threw herself into it. Work became meditation. Every decision about paint colors or furniture placement was a decision that didn't involve life and death. It was healing in a way therapy never quite managed. Adrian helped. Not overtly, but funding appeared when they needed it. Permits got approved faster than they should have. Obstacles that would have taken months to clear vanished overnight. He was rebuilding his own empire, keeping his promise to make it different, cleaner. Elena watched from a distance, saw him negotiate with contractors and community leaders, saw him turn properties that had been fronts for illegal operations into actual businesses that employed actual people. It wasn't perfect. There were compromises, deals with people who weren't entirely clean, but it was better than what Katerina had built, and better was enough for now. They didn't see each other often. A few meetings, careful conversations about shared interests and mutual goals, nothing personal, nothing that acknowledged the history between them. Until the night 3 weeks before the community center was scheduled to open. Elena was working late, painting accent walls because contractors charged too much and she needed to feel useful. Her phone rang. Adrian's number. She almost didn't answer. But something, instinct or curiosity or the part of her that still felt connected to him, made her pick up. Elena, I need you to come to Meridian Tower. Now. It's important. The address made her stomach drop. Meridian Tower. Where Katerina had lived. Where Elena had confronted her before everything went nuclear. Why? Because there's something you need to see, and I'd rather you see it with me than find out some other way. The line went dead. Elena stood in her half-painted community center, holding a phone and feeling the past reach forward to grab her. She should have ignored it, should have stayed focused on building instead of being pulled back into whatever mess Adrian had uncovered. But she'd never been good at ignoring things. 20 minutes later, she stood in the lobby of Meridian Tower. The doorman was different, younger, didn't recognize her, just checked her ID against a list and waved her through. The elevator ride to the 12th floor felt longer than it had months ago, back when she'd been terrified and desperate and armed with leverage that turned out to be useless. The penthouse looked different. Furniture changed, walls repainted, like someone had tried to erase Katerina's presence and hadn't quite succeeded. Ghosts didn't leave just because you changed the decor. Adrian stood by the windows. Same view, same city, different man. He turned when she entered. Thank you for coming. You said it was important. It is. He gestured to a folder on the coffee table. Thick, official looking. Federal agents came to see me yesterday. About Katerina. Elena's pulse jumped. What about her? She's in prison. Life sentence, no parole. She's sick, stage 4 cancer, pancreatic. The kind that doesn't respond to treatment. Prison doctors give her 6 months, maybe less. The news should have brought satisfaction. Katerina Cade dying in a federal prison felt like justice, cosmic, appropriate. But Elena felt nothing, just hollow recognition that even monsters were mortal. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because she's asking to see you, both of us. Claims she has information, something that matters. Wouldn't tell the feds what it was, just said she'd only talk to us. That's manipulation. She's dying and she wants one last chance to twist the knife. Probably. Adrian moved closer. But what if it's real? What if there's something we need to know? Some loose end that comes back to hurt us if we ignore it? Elena looked at the folder, at the medical reports and federal communications, and the machinery of a dying woman trying to maintain control even from prison. When? She asked. Tomorrow. Federal facility upstate. Maximum security. We'd be escorted the entire time, monitored, safe. Safe. The word felt like a lie. There's nothing safe about being in a room with Katerina Cade. Then we don't go. We ignore her. Let her die with her secrets. Elena wanted that. Wanted to walk away and never think about Katerina again. Let the woman rot in her cell and take her manipulations to whatever came after. But underneath the desire was something else. Curiosity. The need to understand. To hear whatever final words Katerina thought mattered enough to demand an audience. Okay, Elena said. I'll go. But if this is a trap, if she's trying to orchestrate something from inside, I'm walking out. Agreed. They drove upstate together. 3 hours of highway, an awkward silence, and the weight of everything unsaid pressing down like atmosphere. Adrian tried to make conversation, asked about the community center, about her plans, about how she was doing. Elena gave short answers. Fine. Good. Moving forward. What she didn't say was that she still had nightmares. That some mornings she woke up and couldn't remember if she was the person who'd poured drinks or the person who'd burned down an empire. That healing was slower and harder than anyone had warned her. The federal facility was exactly what she'd expected. Concrete, razor wire, guards with the kind of eyes that had seen too much and stopped being surprised. They were processed, searched, escorted through security checkpoints that felt designed to remind visitors how small they were. The meeting room was small, table, chairs, reinforced glass window showing a corridor. 2 guards stationed outside. Camera in the corner recording everything. They waited. Elena's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table, focused on breathing. The door opened. Katerina shuffled in wearing orange scrubs and leg irons. She'd lost weight, hair thinner, skin with the kind of pallor that came from illness and fluorescent lighting. But her eyes were still sharp, still calculating, still dangerous. She sat across from them, hands cuffed to a chain at her waist, looking at Elena, then Adrian, then back to Elena. You came, Katerina said. Her voice was rougher, weaker, but still carrying that edge of control. I wasn't certain you would. We're here, Elena said flatly. Talk. Say whatever you think matters, then we leave. Direct, I appreciate that. You've grown harder since we last spoke. Good. The world needs hard women. Soft ones don't survive. I survived you. Did you? Katerina leaned forward. The chains rattled. Or did you just become me? Look at yourself, Elena. Building power structures, making alliances, using money and influence to shape the world. You think that's different from what I did? It is different. I'm helping people, not exploiting them. For now. But give it time, give it pressure, give it a situation where helping people conflicts with protecting yourself and see which one you choose. Katerina's smile was knowing. We're not that different. You just haven't accepted it yet. Elena's jaw clenched. Is this why you called us here? To philosophize about how I'm just like you? Because I could have stayed home for that. No, I called you here because I'm dying. And when I die, something happens that you need to prepare for. Adrian spoke for the first time. What happens? Katerina looked at her son, and for just a moment something soft moved behind her eyes. Regret, maybe, or the ghost of whatever love she'd been capable of before ambition had calcified over it. When I built this empire, I built it with insurance, leverage on everyone who mattered, judges, politicians, law enforcement. I collected secrets the way other people collect art, and I stored them somewhere safe. Somewhere that would trigger automatic release if I died without inputting a specific code every 90 days. The room temperature dropped. You're lying, Elena said, but her voice lacked conviction. I'm dying. Lying would be pointless. Katerina pulled a piece